are on now. Good morning, folks. I turned the mic on a second before I should. Sorry, we're a bit late today. You know, the old technical bugaboo. Are you listening, geeks? Anyway, it is 6:36. It is Friday, December 6th, 2019. Chris will be along with the weather in just a few minutes. I think it's like 44 now. We may have a wintry mix. But how can you have a wintry mix, Chris, when it's 44 degrees? It makes no sense to me. At any rate, welcome to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone here along with Chris Conway. This is Radio Westchester, the radio station at the train station. Let's look at the headlines this morning. 2 children and 2 adults found dead in a Pleasantville home. The father who left his twins in a hot car has his case adjourned, at least for now. Opening statements begin in the corruption trial of Mount Vernon's former top attorney. And utility company employees rescue a grandfather from a Muncie fire. We're happy about that. But don't ask us why, but they also saved some goats. We don't yet know what the relationship was, with the goats. Alrighty, welcome. Chris Conway's coming up right now with the weather. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Bob. Right now it is 32 degrees along the Sound
Oh, I
Shore.
thought it was 44. 30, it's 32.
It actually doesn't feel that bad outside.
No,
Today,
it doesn't feel like it's cold out.
There'll be a mix of rain and snow, as Bob mentioned. Probably more rain, since the temperatures are going to get into the mid-40s. It'll be cloudy most of the day. Tonight, a few passing clouds. Highs will be around 30 degrees. Tomorrow, Saturday, mostly sunny but cold, with the highs only in the low to mid-30s. Sunday, sunny skies, temps around 42. Monday and Tuesday will be warmer in the 50s, but rain expected both days. And weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. It's voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. Nice job with the weather. And you're right, it does not feel 32. I do not believe what is up there on our system, but it is what it is. Today's program is supported by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, its operated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, plug in virtual reality, and Dominic Cigars at 8 o'clock today. They will be bringing you Jake's Picks of the Week based on our wheel yesterday. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They are open 7 days. And, it's time for those news stories. See, Chris, this is why one day I will kill all the geeks. Look at that. What good is a 2-second delay? What good is that? I'm not mad at you. Just stupid. Just shut it off, Robert. All righty. Let's get to the news. I'm obviously not in a good mood, folks. We got passwords to get into these systems that the nuclear codes that would keep us out of war with Russia or eliminate them are not as complicated. We'll fix it. I promise. One day it'll happen. This out of Pleasantville this morning, and it's great to be in a bad mood because this puts me in a sad mood, and it sombers me up. 2 children and 2 adults, apparently from the same family, were found dead in a Romer Avenue home Thursday afternoon, police said. The 2 young children never showed up for school, which prompted a wellness check at 57 Romer Avenue shortly before 2 p.m. That's when the tragic scene was discovered. The community is reeling, Pleasantville Mayor Peter Scherer said during a Thursday evening press conference. Police didn't release the cause of death of the deceased's name or ages to ensure there is adequate time for extended families to be notified. School Superintendent Mary Fox Alter, who was clearly shaken and holding back tears, embodied the community's feelings. As you can imagine, our hearts are broken at the news of this incredible tragedy. And this is all we know right now, folks. Grunzer said police are investigating the incident as a crime, but stressed there is no threat to the community or to the schools. And I'm assuming that it's because 2 children were involved that the school is making so many comments. Chris, there's something a little odd about that. I hope it wasn't a school employee, but again, I wish it wasn't any human being. Godspeed to their family. 641. The Rockland father, accused in the hot car deaths of his 1-year-old twins, was in Bronx court today. The Bronx District Attorney's Office say that Juan Rodriguez's case has been adjourned to February 6. Prosecutors have yet to move forward in presenting the case to a grand jury. The DA says her office is in the process of the investigation, but Rodriguez's attorney believes the prosecution doesn't have a case to indict. That's worthy of a discussion, Chris. They probably do, but almost any judge worth his salt would say this guy's paid a price or not. You know, those two children, they have rights independent of their parents. You know, anyway, just a thought as I calm down. I don't do well with technical stuff. But Merrill Lynch, I was famous for breaking copiers, computers that didn't work. I once threatened the tech people there that I would drop my computer out the front door on the heads of people going in and out if they didn't fix it now. For a guy that's very tolerant in general, I have no patience with machines that are supposed to be reliable. None. Zip. Zero. All righty. As I kind of calm down my rage. Okay, opening statements begin in the corruption trial of Mount Vernon's former top attorney. The state's trial for Mount Vernon's former top attorney, who was accused of defrauding the city's water department. What a weird case this is. Will begin today. This in News 12. And his name is Lawrence Picari. He's charged with corrupting the government, grand larceny, defrauding the government, and offering a false instrument for filing. He was indicted this past May. I love when they just put the thing in like that and don't use plain speak, but that's okay. He's accused of stealing more than $350,000 from the city's water department to pay then-Mayor Richard Thomas's legal fees and a public relations firm. At that time, Thomas was under indictment for state election violations. He has since pleaded guilty and resigned. Now, during opening statements, attorneys for the New York State Attorney General's office laid out the alleged scheme, arguing Picari wanted to please the mayor but couldn't get the funds through the proper city channels. They say he instead requested multiple checks from the water department, which is a separate entity with its own budget and less financial oversight, all the while knowing what he was doing was illegal. Picari's lawyer argues he never intended to defraud or steal from anyone. And Lewis, Mr. Stephen Lewis, one of Lawrence Picari's attorneys, says, "You're going to learn that Harry never got one dime, one penny of any of these monies." And that's probably true, by the way. That is a very strange case. And we don't know if the comptroller was doing the right thing by not paying bills that they had for all kinds of issues, or if in this specific case, she took a principal position to say, I can't pay that. But I'd be very surprised if he is convicted. In fact, if he's got a good lawyer, he ought not be, at least in my opinion, having covered that story every single day for the last 2-3 years. Ordinary heroes rescuing a person from a burning building is a gripping tale. But add the goats, Chris. I didn't make this up, and this is out of LOHUD today. Under O&R utility employee, Ted Ryder's hard hat and reflective vest is more than 4 decades of firefighting, but he's never come across this before. He, along with 2 other employees, James Lynch and Ross Daly, saw the flames shooting from a Muncie home on Wednesday and immediately stopped and pulled over. A young woman told him that her grandfather was still inside, and Ryder didn't hesitate. That's our guest coming up, but we're going to ask him to hold because we're running a tad late. That is a call from Europe, so we will be with you momentarily. We'll have to change the order of things, but I just want to finish the story. Daly managed to save, which is pretty cool, the grandfather, but he found goats. They're alive and they're doing well, Chris. Go figure out. And this out of West Point. A West Point staff sergeant was arrested on a child pornography charge following an undercover FBI investigation. This in News 12 today as well. Officials say 37-year-old Patrick Goychuk of New Windsor was chatting with an undercover agent for about a month on the free messaging app KIK. He expressed interest in preteens before sending over 2 links of videos and pictures of child pornography. That's the local news today, Chris. We got to do things out of order. We're going to talk with our good buddy. We wanted to get some sense, folks. based on the NATO summit and some of the behavior of some of the heads of state and foreign service people at the NATO summit towards President Trump and President Trump towards them. So we reached out to our correspondent in Europe. Please welcome Maren Vandermeer. Good morning, Maren. How are you?
Good morning to you and good afternoon to me.
Well, it's good afternoon to you, but it's 6:30. As you can, we sent you that text because, as you now know, and I've stopped bristling. We had some technical issues that we had to deal with, and I don't do well with technical issues. It's my failing. I'm way
Don't worry about it.
I'm way too hard on the geeks, but it's just how I'm wired. You should see. Let me get this off my chest.
So
we have a password, a series of passwords for some of our systems that the nuclear codes, the football that the President of the United States carries with him isn't that complicated. All right, now I'm getting it off my chest. All right. Maren, we recently had this situation whereupon we had the NATO summit. There are issues as to whether or not the United States should continue to lead it as it has. It had always been an essential part of it. The president is the president, Donald Trump, our president here in the States, kind of says the rest of Europe should ante up more, but also his behavior creates reactions. What is your take on that? What was the take in Europe? What's the feel first towards this president, A, B, his behavior when he's out there, C, and the sense towards the United States these days? And I'm not asking you to rip us. I understand that we're all part of the Western liberal democracies for as long as that continues. But what is the sense? What can you tell us?
It was a quite interesting week, if you ask me. It looked a little bit like a middle school schoolyard because Prime Ministers Trudeau from Canada, so he was not a part of the European Union, as we all know, but also Macron from France, our own Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, and Merkel. She was not standing next to those guys when they were caught spreading rumors about Trump.
Yeah,
even though
God, I'm sorry.
Even though they didn't say his name, everybody knows that they were talking about him, and they said like he was had to leave early after he gave a 45-minute speech, and they were laughing about him. It seems a little childish.
Yeah.
And then
if I could just underscore that, one of our opinion writers here in New York made an allusion to that old movie Mean Girls, and they said they acted just as you described, like they behaved like children.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is not something you expect of a NATO summit. It was kind of ridiculous. It was kind of weird, and then Mr. Trump, his response was, "You know what? If you don't want me here and you don't appreciate me, I'm out." So he left.
Yeah.
Which is, in that case, like not what NATO is about. NATO is about talking to each other and communicating and doing the best thing for the world, even if it's Europe or the United States or Turkey. But right now, Trump is not making any friends. And I think the whole little get-together of the prime ministers, Johnson was there too, maybe says it all how Europe thinks about Trump.
Does it? Oh, go ahead. Say more.
Belittle him.
What now? Now let's talk about NATO for a little bit. When and in the United States, there are people that feel that Europe should pony up more. But look, that's a fair question that the president levels. However, one of the things that gets missed, it's in the United States' best interest to carry that mail because of the global benefits that we receive, and not enough is mentioned about that. But what is the sense in Europe?
I think that because they don't add the 2% or are not up to 2% for defense money, it's also basically the reason how they think about it. Like, yes, it's important, but we're not going to do whatever you say you think is necessary to do. Actually, the Netherlands is now going to provide $5 million extra to NATO,
Mm-hmm.
and our prime minister called it a Christmas present to Mr. Trump, and just a small amount of money. So he actually gave in and gave them more of like $5 million.
Well, good
$5
for him,
million
because
more.
the president, while he always doesn't make friends, this is an issue that he has a lot of support for and has a great justification for. We're doing this for us. Yes, we get benefits, but we're also doing it for Europe and liberal democracy. But in general, how is it received by most countries? Did you suggest earlier that some of the countries in Europe don't think NATO is that important, or do you think they just say, "Good, we don't have to pay for it. America is"?
No, I don't think that's the whole reason. I don't think that we benefit of the United States.
No, I'm talking about the
definitely
NATO.
Important.
I'm talking
Yeah,
about that we
well,
benefit from NATO.
Yeah, well, NATO is important no matter what, and that's why all the prime ministers go there. But I think it's now just a little fight besides NATO. Like it's now not NATO concerned, but it's basically man on man. If we go there and the United States is going there, Trump is coming. It's not just the United States is coming, Trump is coming. And they belittle him because they talk about him. And he basically gets into it as well by leaving early. So, like, we had so many press conferences, so I'm skipping this one, I'm leaving. That is how children react. You don't like me, I'm going out. And I think they should just go back to talking to each other, NATO style, I would call it like that. It sounds a little weird, but just go back to the table and just like really talk and do what's best for the world, because that's what NATO is all about. And they should go back to the basics, basically. And I don't think that is going on right now. And that is also the sense that I get out of the media, because I'm not talking to the prime minister directly, but that's basically the sense that I get out of the media and out of the conversations that they have, that yes, it's important, yes, we have to do that, but please go back to the table and just work it out as adults, as political figures, and not just acting like small girls from the schoolyard.
We're talking with Marrone Vandermeer. He's Radio Westchester's correspondent in Europe, and we appreciate your being here. What about the impeachment here in the United States, that process? How is it being viewed in Europe, the behavior of both our parties, et cetera, et cetera? And based on what you see in the press there, what is the sentiment?
Like I said the last time, like it's getting less coverage here than it is in the United States. I'm watching CNN a lot, and I'm also watching Fox News just to see and get both sides of the story.
Yes.
Even though I'm not really allowed to watch Fox News at home because my wife doesn't really like it if I watch it, but I secretly do it sometimes. Just to see how they cover.
That's fair.
Here,
that's a good way to get a take.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think it's funny because I do read the articles about impeachment here in the Netherlands, and it's basically that both sides say that they're winning, and that's interesting. If you are interested in it, you can find your sources in Dutch media, European media, to read all about it. But I don't think the people here are thinking that's the most important thing to do right now, because it's a little like not our problem. And to be honest, I think a lot of people just like, you know what, this is all will blow over because it's not important. And it's just a witch hunt, is Trump calls it, not that we call like that, but it's just not part of our local news. It's yes, it's mentioned, and yes, if there are really big things that are said or done, we will hear about it because it still involves us, but not that much.
6:55, Marrone Vandermeer, our correspondent in Europe, on the phone with us. What is Europe's sensibility towards, and let's go to the big kahuna out in the East, not China, which is the biggest, but in terms of its issues with Western Europe and even the Eastern Bloc, what is the view towards Russia? How much cooperation is there, but also how much are they dealt with a certain amount of, what am I looking for, caution, dubiousness?
To be honest, I don't hear that much about it
at
all. I think the United States is way more, I wouldn't use obsessed, but way more involved in Russia, because those are the big boys. We, as a European country, are always smaller. We don't have the leverage that you can put in as the United States. We really need them because they produce a lot of natural gas that we use in our houses. That is necessary, but politically, there is not much friction.
Okay, this is good to hear. It's 6:56. Moving on to one other issue. What is the mood in Europe concerning Brexit and the Brits' continued fight over whether or not they're going to go forward with leaving the Union?
Now you're talking about a topic that does involve us because it's really close by, and we do hear a lot about that. First, the elections, though. I think that is a deal breaker. I think Johnson is going to win because I still think the sentiment is we got this far, we're really close to making a deal, so let's pick this guy and get it over with.
What deal will they make, though? What are they going to do about Northern Ireland and about passports? You know, one of the things, this is just from a distance, and you can educate us. From a distance, one of the problems that I see, and at least Boris Johnson's a little more honest about it, is that UK wants to be able to say that they left the European Union, but they want all the benefits.
Yeah, that's true.
That's how I read it.
No, that's true. They would like to have all the benefits, and that's why I don't think it's good to just get a no deal, as in we just leave and we just figure it out along the way, which will be the worst thing because the markets and the trade between people, movement of people, but also people that live there on visas, but also economical and trade, it will go on.
Is it fair to say, you know, and I spent a lot of time in the UK, and I spent so much time that I even developed that sense of, hey, we're separate, you know, this isn't Europe, this is the UK, and one can get so soaked in that pride that one acts against one's own interest. And because when when it first came up, I have to be honest, I said, yeah, they should be on their own. Let them have their pounds. It's a different place. It has a different feel than mainland Europe, and it does. But then the more I looked into it and the more I read about it, it was really pride because they want all the benefits, but they still want to say they left.
Sure. And I think that goes back to decades ago where the UK was a really strong power.
Sure.
Because if you look at all the people that voted in favor of Brexit, it's not the millennials. It's mostly older people that will, with all due respect, pass away within 10 to 20 years. So they basically hold on to the sense that they were a strong country. They are known. They don't want to be involved and pay too much to the European Union, even though the millennials, people from like 30 years old, 20 and younger, they think, you know what, we need each other, and it's a good thing. You know, if I fly to my sister, for instance, in Barcelona, I don't have to show my passport at all because it's within Europe. It's basically like taking a domestic flight within the United States. You can fly, they can ask for it, you show your ID because you have to identify yourself, but sometimes you don't have to.
Right.
If you fly to the UK, you have to show your passport, you have to wait in line because they basically keep their borders straight. This is the UK, this is what we do, and now they want to get out. And I think the whole Brexit vote back in 2016 is going back to sentiment. We want to be our own United Kingdom, and there's already a difference between England and Scotland.
Yes.
If you would now have a vote in Scotland, I'm not sure what they will vote. I think they might want to leave and break free from the United Kingdom.
Yeah, what I've read,
country.
What I've read, I think they want to stay in the European Union as well. So that is
absolutely
is going to create some tension within the British well, it's not an empire anymore. I wanted to talk about that a little bit before we let you go. And this is with all due respect to the UK, which I have come to love because I spent so much time there. However, if we go all the way back after World War I and through World War II and now into this new millennia, they are a country that went to one of the dominating powers in the history of the world. They lost most of their empire. They lost a lot of their influence. And now with Brexit, they were molding into the rest of Europe. It almost seems that it has been a bitter pill for them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you still have all the countries, I don't know what the world is right now, But all the countries, for instance, Canada and the Turks and Caicos and in Australia are still part of the kingdom or empire of the United Kingdom that they used to be.
But it's very loosely. I mean, it's very
the Commonwealth.
Loosely. Yeah, the Commonwealth. Although, you know what? I'm going to say this about the UK. For those of us who live here in the Eastern Seaboard, and my Caribbean friends aren't going to like this, but I got to go there. The most well-run island out in the Atlantic, and not quite the Caribbean, is still Bermuda. It has less crime. It has less corruption. It works. The average person there does very well. The homes are nice. It's clean. Whereas most of the other Caribbean islands, you got to stay in the resort. You got to stay on the, oh my goodness, don't go out. Don't leave the resort that you're in. And so anyway, that's just an aside, I guess. But it's something that when you vacation a lot, as I once used to.
I went to Turks and Caicos a couple of years ago. I loved it because it was my first trip to a Caribbean island. And it was pretty interesting to see that they import everything to another country from the mainland. Yeah. So it's pretty expensive, but it
works.
It was nice.
Take a trip to Nassau. Take a trip to the Bahamas. You don't dare step out. And as much as we love Jamaica here in the United States, but even so, you step out of the resorts and it ain't a safe place, or at least relatively speaking. So now that I've
Speaking of Nassau, by the way, Bob, before you let me go,
sure.
That is actually inheritance of the Dutch Empire.
Mm-hmm.
That was the king who was back, the first king, basically. He came from Nassau, which is in Germany. And they now called Nassau, which is also in our national anthem. So it's named after some Dutch heritage. Yeah,
I'm aware of that Nassau is that's why we have a Nassau County here. I'm trying to figure where we got it from. Probably from when the Dutch were here or the German.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I figured that one out. Pretty good, right? I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I had another thought and I lost it because I was looking at the clock and I know I have to get rolling. But that's all. Oh, by the way, another place, Aruba is did the Dutch still run that, or is that Denmark? Who runs Aruba?
It's a Dutch island, it's a little complicated, as in has its own government, but it's still under the Dutch government. So whenever some stuff really goes down there, we can still get in.
Let's have some fun. We have this expression that we've used since I was a kid. If Chris Conway, go to lunch today, and I said, let's go Dutch, it means we're both paying. What's the derivation of that?
Because we're cheap.
Oh, Marrone. Listen, Marrone Vandermeer, folks, he is our correspondent in Europe. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful afternoon into the evening, sir.
Thank you, you too. And good for having me.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for having me, and talk to you soon.
Okay, we'll talk to you again in a few days, I am sure. All right, we're going to, let's see, we're going to do a nice little reset here. It is 7:04. I'm in a better mood. I don't know why I get like that over technical stuff. It's a part of the business, Chris. Part of the business. All righty, welcome to Radio Westchester. We are the radio station at the train station. It is Friday, December 6th, 2019. It's 32 degrees and overcast. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone, and you can listen live on RadioWestchester.com. You can go to the parent app that contains us, if you will, and that's MyTuner Radio. You'll see that I have a little face there, and click on that. You can listen. You can also watch and listen on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Periscope. Let's check in with Chris Conway and find out what's going on more completely with respect to the weather. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Bob. It is 32 degrees here in New Rochelle. Today, we will have a mix of rain and snow showers. Highs will be in the mid-40s. It will be cloudy throughout the day. Tonight, a few passing clouds, highs in the low 30s. Tomorrow, Saturday, mostly sunny but cold with highs only around 35. Sunday, mostly sunny skies, temperatures in the low 40s. Monday and Tuesday, warmer in the 50s but rain on both days. And weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Here's my mic. And Chris stays with us for a look at the sports, and then we'll talk sports a little bit and open up the telephones, talk a little bit about sports. It's Friday. Let's have some fun. Sports is always fun. That is, unless you're the Giants, I guess, or for that matter, the New York Knicks. What's going on in the world of sports, Chris?
Yes, we'll start with the Knicks. They faced Denver last night at Madison Square Garden. They lost 129-92. Another stellar effort by the Knicks.
They got defaced.
It is the second straight game they were trailing at some point by over 40 points. It is the first time in team history they've lost back-to-back games by over 30 points. They are now 4-18, 8 losses in a row, and you have to wonder if Knicks coach David Fizdale isn't on the red-hot seat.
My goodness.
They were supposed to be better this year. They were maybe not compete for a playoff spot, but definitely improve over last year with some of the free agents they signed, and it's just been a disaster.
They need to just be patient like the Rangers have been and go step by step. You can see the benefit over there on the other side of Madison Square Garden. What else you got? Sports.
In hockey, the Rangers defeated the Columbus Blue Jackets 3-2. Artemi Panarin scored a goal in his return to Columbus. The Islanders defeated Vegas 3-2. Ryan Pollock scored his 4th goal of the year in overtime. Vegas almost had the tri-state area sweep, but the Islanders defeated them.
I just thought of something evil. Tom from Pelham.
Yeah.
I read this last night in the paper. Nancy Pelosi is an Islander fan. Just go ahead. Yeah. Big Islander fan.
Last night, Thursday Night Football, chalk went up for the wheel. The Chicago Bears defeated Dallas 31-24. Of course, when Jake spun the wheel yesterday, the wheel picked Dallas. Oh, the wheel picked Dallas. Wow, I was mistaken. No, the wheel lost. I guess Jake picked the Bears.
Are you having technical issues too here?
Yes,
stuttering and everything else?
We'll have to put in a new password.
Remember,
for
good
me.
fellas, you stuttering, muttering. Go ahead.
Tonight, in the NHL, Montreal visits Madison Square Garden to take on the Rangers. Chicago is in New Jersey, and in the NBA, Brooklyn is at Charlotte. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Don't you go anywhere, Mr. Radio Westchester. I got some stuff I want to ask you about regarding sports, and since you follow it, and that's part of your job, where do you weigh in on this issue? We'll get to all that. We'll have this spinner here. At 8 o'clock, we'll do all that. Big story in the paper today. A fan group is making a push to get Thurman Munson in the Hall. Now, if he'd lived, maybe. Is this sentimental because he was killed, or is he really that great? So I was never the biggest.
Probably the former. It's probably sentimentality.
Because I thought he was a very, very good, bordering on great ball player, but I don't, because of his
he was
leadership.
A key part to the Yankees championships, but
I don't view him as a Hall of Famer.
No.
Okay.
A similar case, 10 years later with people who love Don Mattingly. That he had 3 or 4 great years, but
Don Mattingly was a little closer, though. Don Mattingly was the best hitter in baseball
for a couple years, yes, in the mid 80s,
3 or 4 years. Sure. And but yeah, I get that. But you know what? Sometimes I say to myself, why do I give a hoot if it's going to make people happy? Because the Hall of Fame has become such bullspit anyway in sports. All you have to do is be better than mediocre, and you qualify for all of the Halls of Fame. Hockey's gotten really diluted now. Except they don't have any ped scandals, but they do have a scandal that we don't talk about. I've been reading a book about the 70s where hockey was almost destroyed. I mean, it made for a great comedy, Slapshot.
Sure.
But the sad thing about hockey was that Slapshot wasn't that far off. Mm-hmm. And they really almost ruined the sport because of that archaic view of the sport as essentially a fight on skates.
Yeah.
So they, maybe they're going to have asterisks too. Okay, that's one item I cut out. Now the other item that I had right here. Oh yes, there's a sense that the new general manager, or the relatively new general manager of the Mets, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. Brody, biggest loser in the Mets shakeup. One can only hope. Mm-hmm. One can only hope. There's just something about this arrogant Brody Van Wegenen. And the way he's run the team, and the way he's looking for. They say he may be out looking for a poodle to be the manager of the team. Anyway, here's what it reads from Mike Puma. There will be clear winners and losers in the deal that could bring a new majority owner to the Mets. And what they talk about is The biggest loser in the proposed deal might be GM Van Wegenen, though Will Palmer and his son will maintain the titles for 5 years once the deal is completed. The Mets industry insiders fully expect Cohen to, at some point before then, flex his muscles in baseball decisions and may not see Van Wegenen, a former agent who has spent the last year running the Mets. I hope they send him packing. I think he's created...
You could make the argument that the trade Van Wagenen made, because Cano was his client, getting Cano and the reliever Edwin Diaz, that trade cost the Mets a playoff spot.
You know
because
what?
Diaz was so bad.
Yeah, but you know what, though, to be fair to him, I got to be fair to this. Just because I don't like the way he runs the team, it doesn't mean I'm going to throw everything he does under the bus. Maybe that's too much, but I get the sense with this guy that when he got Diaz, he really thought he was helping the team. I mean, the guy all of a sudden went from great to junk.
But relievers have a wide variance. So if a reliever is great 1 year, there's no guarantee. Because he only pitches, relievers only pitch like 50 innings.
Yeah, I know.
So if he has a great 50 innings in 2018, that doesn't really guarantee the next 50 innings are going to be great in 2019.
Well, I not only agree with you, I think that he cut a deal for his client, Robinson Cano, who was past the sell-by date. He should be making half the money and be somebody's DH someplace, not a key player on the Mets.
Nope, and he's got a lot of years left in that contract. He's going to be around for a while.
Maybe if he's a hard worker. That's one thing I always, it was hard to like Alex Rodriguez, but he was a hard worker. You were always going to get the best out of him. I'm not sure we're going to see that same thing with Robinson.
You know what's amazing with A-Rod and Derek Jeter? When they were playing, Jeter was beloved and A-Rod was despised.
And now it's changed.
But now it's flipped completely. A-Rod is this beloved TV figure who does post games and does ESPN baseball, and Jeter is in Miami. Everyone hates him because the Marlins have been
and
terrible,
also the way he ran the
all their
team.
good
As
players.
soon as he took over, he fired one of the scouts. He fired who had cancer. And well, you know what? And this always gets me in trouble because I separate the two. Your performance on the field. I always thought Derek Jeter was full of spit, but because he's such an icon, you can't go there.
Yeah.
And one of the things about my radio career, for good or ill, is I love to go where people say you shouldn't go. I mean, how can we judge you if you wouldn't say spit if you had a mouthful of it?
Yeah.
Smart, political. He was, but something, there's like a difference between him and Eli. You know, he's a much better player than Eli. Eli may or may not make the Hall of Fame. Jeter should go in on the first vote. He's one of the greatest shortstops, counting hitting and fielding of all time. But I always got the sense that he was a ham baloney, though. Mm-hmm. And then, some of the stuff came out. I mean, great. If I was a ball player, I'd be dead already. So I do not begrudge the women he was with. All right. But would he give him a baseball? It's a real sophisticated
parting
dude.
gift.
Here's a baseball. Don't let the bat hit you in the butt. All right. Let's go to this. How do you feel about Eli getting to play on Monday night?
Well, I mean, if Daniel Jones is hurt, it's what you got to do. I mean, the Giants have been so bad, it doesn't matter. You might as well lose as many games as possible or not care if you win or lose because...
Suppose he's stellar. Do you think other teams will be interested in him? Or they just, maybe for half the money he makes or something?
They might. The question is, if the Giants look better with Eli Manning, what does that say about Daniel Jones going forward?
No, I think what does it say about Eli Manning? But a lot's going to fall to how well the line plays.
I think if he wanted to be a backup, I don't think he can start anymore. I don't think anyone would sign him to be a starter, but he could be a backup and stay in the league.
Yeah,
I don't know if he wants to do that.
I don't know if he wants to do that either. All right. And I got a couple of other semi-local stores, some local stores that I did want to do in regional stories. First of all, the MTA, Chris. Governor Cuomo couldn't wait until Christmas to give away his presents. Anyway, the MTA says it will offset their 44. I got this wrong. Their new labor deal is probably going to cost millions of dollars. They've got a $212 million deficit. And in 2022, the last year of this new contract, it could double the deficit to $400 million.
Ooh.
Now, one of the problems we have in the New York metropolitan area, it's expensive. And we've all accepted that. But we don't get the quality.
Yeah.
We pay all these taxes. The MTA, like our bathroom over here, they got to get their acts together. We have a bathroom here, folks, at the train station that doesn't have running water. At least you can't wash your hands.
Oh,
And doesn't it look like one of the room, when you go to the zoo and there's like the ones where the animals are in, like there's like a drain in the middle of it. It looks like that, and we can't even wash our hands.
During the show, I will limit myself to one drink for the show because I do not want to be tempted to even use that restroom.
Oh, my goodness. Anyway, yeah. So that's all I want. We pay all these taxes. Just make things work at least. Okay, this is a story out of Florida, and it's making national news today. 4 people, including a UPS driver, were killed Thursday after robbers stole the driver's truck and led police on a chase that ended in gunfire at a busy South Florida intersection. Why would you rob a UPS truck? I guess for the gifts and all the goodies in the back. So. But both robbers were shot and killed, and the 4th victim was in a nearby vehicle when shots rang out. 20 miles north of where the incident began, FBI special agent in charge said during a news conference that it's very, very early in the investigation. They don't really know what led to all of it except the theft.
What was their plan? To outrun these police cars in a UPS truck?
Yeah, that's pretty much. They fled in a truck, and then they carjacked the UPS delivery truck and its driver. Blah 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 blah. Anyway, when we have more, you'll have more. This is tough for poor people. More than 3 million people could be cut from the food stamps program. There goes my government cheese. This week, the Trump administration unveiled 3 possible changes, including tightening who qualifies for aid and creating work requirements. Let's see what the requirement is. The SNAP program, as it's called, is the formal name for food stamps. President Trump has argued against what he calls entitlement programs since his campaign. The 3 proposed rule changes could mean people going off the dole. And let's see what they are. I had them here before, and I guess I lost my place. But one of them involves that you got to work if you can, which I guess makes sense. Mm-hmm. But I don't know what the others are. Okay, more than 3 million. Sorry about that. I must have lost the other notes. All righty, let's move on. It is 7:18, and it's time to open up the telephones. 914-222-3141. 914-222-3141. Did you know that today marks the death of the real original Santa Claus? I bet you didn't know that, Chris.
No, I did not.
Yes, it did. In the year 364 AD, he died. And I didn't realize that there was a real Santa Claus. And according to my notes here, which I lost during my technical outrage, what he would do, and remember, things were different then. When a man got married to a woman, usually the woman's family had to post a dowry. Otherwise, the marriage didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So he would actually give the dowry. He was very well off. And here it is. Yeah, I got it. All right. 342 AD, the real jolly old St. Nicholas died on this date. He became associated with gift-giving because he secretly provided dowries to poor brides-to-be. He also established the first known homes for the elderly. Bet you didn't know that today was St. Nick's Day.
I did not know that, but I do know, for our kids listening, that Santa is alive and well and will be bringing you gifts in 2 weeks.
He will? Well, is it 2 weeks or what? It's about 3.
Less than 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's less than 2 weeks? No, it's not the 15th. You have to
3 weeks. 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Less than 3 weeks.
See, but this is in honor of Santa Claus that I did this. Miserable. It's the kind of day I'm having. All righty, let's see what else happened on this day. Thomas Edison in 1877 demonstrated the first gramophone with a recording of himself reciting Mary Had a Little Lamb. And in 1923... on this day, the first presidential address on radio. Let's go to the telephone. The first address on radio by President Calvin Coolidge. Okay, that's it. Today, by the way, I hate these days, but I'll say them. Today is Miners' Day. I just hit the button. Didn't I hit the button? There you go. Be right there. Caller will be right there. Dane Cook's sister-in-law and half-brother were ordered to repay. I didn't know this. You know the comedian Dane Cook, right?
Yes, I do know.
His half-brother and sister-in-law were ordered to repay the comedian $12 million they admitted to stealing while managing his business. How much money do you have to make where you don't really notice that someone stole $12 million from you?
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, and as I said, the phones are open, 914-222-3141. And looking straight ahead to the rest of the morning, at 7:35, we're going to be talking with Steve Callis, another sports guy. We'll ask him about some of these issues. He is the sports editor for the Mount Vernon Post, the editor-in-chief of the Mount Vernon Post. Albritton will be with us. Jake's Picks at 8 o'clock. I can't wait for him to come on. At 8:20, Al Tarantino will be with us. 8:35, Dr. Sternberg from Politics in Your Health, and then Hezi Aris at 9. Good morning. You are on Radio Westchester.
Hey, Bob, it's Mitchell.
Good morning, Mitchell. How are you?
I am good.
I broke my lights. Go ahead.
You broke your light.
No, my lights, my Christmas lights.
Your Christmas lights. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
And I heard you speaking of Santa Claus and Christmas, and I was wondering, do you know who actually created the modern day Christmas that we know, the commercial part of
No, I do
that
not.
made it so big in America?
No, I do not.
German Jewish immigrants.
Is that right? No
That
kidding.
is correct.
German Jewish immigrants.
And,
Why did they
and-
create Christmas when they're not believers in our particular choice for a Messiah?
for the oldest reason in the book, to try to make a buck.
Oh, good for them. I'm glad they did it. I love
many,
Christmas.
Many of them were merchants back in the mid-1800s.
Mm-hmm.
And the slowest part of the year, obviously, was the winter. Did very little business. And they, being from Germany, they knew Santa Claus was a minor saint back in a German saint that they knew about.
Mm-hmm.
And they commercialized Christmas to make it, in order to be able to have a reason for people to buy their goods.
So
in the middle of the
essentially
winter.
telling me that they're the reason, as much as I love Christmas, that I have to go crazy in the next 3 weeks buying presents and going broke.
Yep.
Well,
Their action worked to perfection because everybody now buys. It's the strongest part of the. It turned from the weakest part of the year to the strongest part of the year for merchants.
I need to mention this before someone calls up who doesn't know history and calls us all anti-Semites. I'm proud to say that our friend Mitchell is a member of the tribe himself, and a not uber religious, but a decent, well-respected member of his congregation. So this news came to you from a Jewish person themselves. Because in this day and age, they'll shoot me for thinking
This is actually in a very famous book about Jewish immigrants. So
actually, that's pretty
about
cool.
The book's probably about 40, 50 years old.
Do you know, I've got a guy who comes on every once in a while, and we're going to be using him in the book that in the show that we're preparing on the evolution of anti-Semitism in Europe. But the diaspora, the Jewish diaspora around the world is incredible. Places like you wouldn't think of, St. Croix, Jamaica, all these little enclaves throughout the world. The diaspora is everywhere.
By the way, on the flip side, you know where the oldest Jewish temple outside of Israel is?
Miami. No, I don't.
Close, Rome.
Oh, well, that makes sense, though. That makes total sense.
Yes, it does.
It was the
Yes,
base of the Holy Roman Empire. Yeah, go ahead.
But if I may, I don't know if you saw, but some lying polls came out.
Yes.
More lying polls. They have my president underwater.
What kind of poll is that? What's a lying poll? A lying poll? What is that?
I forget which polls it was, but
okay. When you say underwater, what do you mean? What do you mean underwater?
As far as approve, disapprove.
Oh, okay.
So he's 13 points underwater in Wisconsin. He's basically underwater in every state that you would think would be contested.
You're talking about the battlegrounds, so-called battlegrounds. Except
for Florida, where I think he's up by a point or two. Texas is actually only up by 3 points. Now, listen, we all know with the beautiful job he's doing that this cannot be correct. So these are just more lying polls.
You're being snarky. You're being snarky again. Well, you know what? Anyone who treats Cuba badly gets votes from Florida, and that group of Cubans in South Florida that's hijacked the whole state politically drives me nuts. And I'm going to my grave thinking that they had something to do with killing Kennedy too. Not all the people there, but that they're more militant members that have worked with the CIA and everything else. So
you're probably one of those that still believe that Jimmy Hoffa's buried in the end zone.
No, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I have enough books and I've read enough stuff to know that and while I understand it, whether it's the expats in South Florida, though fortunately they're dying off, or the mob that lost money there, and I don't know if they did it, but I go back to so many different things, including my work on Wall Street and the dubiousness with which we treated South Florida. It's a little country within a country. They got to get over it. You lost. People lose wars. It happens. Get over it. You lost your country.
Okay.
But they have much political power, and that's the way our system is set up. Would you, having said that, keep the Electoral College?
I think so.
Why? To ensure.
I think it forces presidential candidates to campaign in smaller states that probably otherwise would be ignored.
Okay, so even though, and I'm saying this to challenge you, I go back and forth on it. I think the Electoral College was needed, and maybe still is, because you can't have mob rule. In fact, the people that are trying to push out Fayho should remember that. You can't have mob rule. You've got to have balance, and we have parts of the country with very different interests and very different needs. The only thing I think is ridiculous is to give each state 2 senators. I mean, Staten Island is bigger than Wyoming. This county's bigger than Wyoming. There are Podunk Islands that are bigger than Wyoming, and they get 2 senators? Really? That I don't agree with.
This is true, but if you believe in state rights, then 2 senators make sense.
No, it should be proportionate to your size, like the Congress.
Listen, as you know, I hesitated.
Wyoming should get like a left leg or a foot or something.
I hesitate, as you could probably notice. I hesitated when you asked me about what I think of the Electoral College. So while I'm probably slightly in favor of it, wouldn't bother me if it disappeared. But I think as far as states' rights, 2 senators sort of does give states a safety net, and again, gets their voice to be heard. If you did it by proportion, there's some states that wouldn't have any senators.
Well, that's why I made the joke. Maybe we should give Wyoming like 2 toes and a fingernail. But but again, it is. I don't know. I've always supported the Electoral College, but what does bother me is now that we have states that we know which way they're going before we do it, the system is rigged for both parties, and so they battle it out over 6 states, and some states that shouldn't have the power that they do.
Yes, that's one of the negatives of the Electoral College, is that it has resulted in always a handful of states actually being the only place anybody cares about. And maybe but getting away from that would help, that people would have to campaign really everywhere. But
wouldn't it be nice?
Listen, I could go either way on it. But the bottom line is, given the fact that you would have to have the constitutional amendment to get rid of it, I would say it's probably nearly impossible.
Well, our country needs, I'm one of those people who believe we need to revise the Constitution, but because of the feelings of both sides, it ain't ever going to happen. Just why that's the same reason we can't solve the immigration problem. Give Trump his due. At least he's tried and tries.
Yes, but the framers, Bob, did put in a provision to change in the Constitution.
Yeah, they did.
They realized what they thought back in 1789 might not, going forward, may change. So they did put in a provision that enabled us to, and we've had 24, 25, 27 different amendments that have changed the Constitution, but they made sure to make it difficult to change it.
Well,
So-
yes, they did, and they did it rightly so. But do you think they realized that what with computers and the other algorithms we could put together, that we would gerrymander 80% of the country? I mean, as a political operative, I'm sure you like that. I do not. I think that it's undemocratic.
Obviously, nobody even knew what a computer, even
that's
had
my
a thought
point.
of a computer back then. But if you look at the Federalist Papers, they did speak about their concern for political parties.
Yes, they did.
And many in the Federalist Papers were against a strong political parties.
Washington
So
was.
that's what, right. So when you talk about gerrymandering and all that, that's because of two strong political parties. So they actually, yes, I think they did try to warn the country against that. We didn't listen. We created two strong political parties, and as a result, we get gerrymandering. So they warned us against it, but we didn't listen.
No, we didn't listen, and we're stuck with it. I mean, we get senators and congressmen and women from both parties that mail it in, that don't care, or that say the most radical things knowing that they're safe. Anyway, thank you very much for the call, Mitchell. We really appreciate it. We've got
You have a great weekend.
you too. We got to take care of some other business, and we will do that. We need to share the weather with you again. I know it's 32 degrees and overcast, but Chris Conway has a much better feel for this stuff than I, because he has the info. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. It's 32 degrees and overcast.
I want the whole weather.
Well, you were right. I want to
See?
give you credit. It's mostly cloudy.
Well,
there will be scattered.
You'll never make a wife because you
Scattered.
got to. I always have to be wrong. Go ahead.
Rain or snow showers possible throughout the day. Highs in the mid-40s. Tonight it'll get down to about 30 degrees, a few passing clouds. Tomorrow, mostly sunny but cold with the highs only in the mid to low 30s. Sunday, sunny skies with highs reaching 42 degrees. Monday and Tuesday, it'll warm up in the mid-50s both days, but we are looking at rain in the forecast for Monday and Tuesday. Weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. It's voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. We have an emergency. I lost one of my Christmas lights. Do you know
The
where-
red one, it's gone.
But it hit me in the head. Well, we have to find it because when we get to Jake's Picks and everything and spin the wheel, we need to have our celebratory stuff. All righty, let's take a look at what's coming up and where we are. We expect to hear from Steve Callis any moment and talk a little sports with him as well, which means we got to get Jake in the chair in a few minutes as well. Today's 7:30, that's called the bottom of the hour in this trade, is brought to you by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, their associates, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, plug-in virtual reality, and Dominic's Cigars. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente. Here we go, Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont, open 7 days. Thank you for being with us once again. You are listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he. I'm here with Chris Conway and Jake Schaefer. This is Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station. You can listen in on radiowestchester.com. Go to the podcast aggregator, which is, and you can put our little icon right there, it's called MyTuner Radio. We also shortly should be on Inside Radio as well. What's that called? No, iTunes, if we're not already there. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Periscope, all of that. Let's see who's on the telephone. Chris, good morning. You're on Radio Westchester.
Steve Callis here.
Hey, Steve, right on cue. It is 7:35. He is the sports editor for the Mount Vernon Post. We had this discussion earlier, and we wanted to have it with you. Chris and I agree, and it doesn't mean that you should, that effort to put Thurman Munson in the Hall of Fame probably should fall short, but will probably happen because of sentiment, because he died. What say you?
I would agree with both of you. You know, Munson was an excellent to, at times, great player. MVP, as you know, tragic ending, as you know.
Yes.
Personally, I like him because just the grit of a catcher. You know, it seems that the catchers always turn out to be the best managers. They're the toughest guys. And Thurman Munson epitomized that. I think a lot of people sided with him vis-a-vis Reggie Jackson, although Reggie Jackson did great things for the Yankees, of course. So I think it's going to happen. And I'm more of a tough Hall of Fame voter, frankly. There would be a lot. I've written articles in the past when they opened the Hall of Fame in 1939. They should just put one or two guys in every year and no more. Because when I was a kid, I went with my dad. You could get your arms around the Hall of Fame. When I took my son 10 years ago to the Hall of Fame when he was playing in one of those travel baseball tournaments, there were so many people there. There's no way in there. There's no way you can do it in a day or even two. So I've written articles. If they just put in one guy a year since 1940, we'd have 86 guys in the Hall of Fame. You know, the first class was 6 guys.
Yeah.
And nobody would ever say this. Does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? That question would never be asked. And here's just another example of what you're going to have. Should Thurman Munson be in the Hall of Fame?
Well, the guy that Chris brought up, kind of akin to that, who I think should probably leak into it, but again, Don Mattingly. What say you?
Mattingly is another one on the border. I think Mattingly is a no for this reason. The only guy I can think of who really had, let's say, 5 or 6 great years, who deserves to be in is Sandy Koufax, who I think is the greatest pitcher who ever lived.
I agree.
Right?
Me too.
And Mattingly was great, but he wasn't quite as dominant, as great as Koufax. Koufax is the exception. Nobody remembers he only won 165 games. Or, if you're anti-Koufax, he only won 165 games. Well, hold it. He was the best pitcher in the game by far for 5 years. There was only one Cy Young Award for the first, I think, 2 that he won. And then Dean Chance beat him, and then he won the next one 3 of the last 4 years. He hurt his arm. He hurt his elbow terribly. That's why he retired at 30.
His last season, he won 27 games. I still scratch my head on that one. Quite remarkable. Speaking of these kinds of players, I had another one in mind, and it just escaped my tiny brain. Who is in the Hall of Fame that you think that you would pull out? Oh, no, I know where I was. Pete Rose. Would you put Pete Rose in?
Well, I wish we had an hour to do Pete Rose. Absolutely, but I'll just give you the Reader's Digest version.
Okay, and then I'll give you my take. Go ahead.
The famous press conferences the day that Rose was banned for life.
Yes.
And there's a book about Pete Rose by Kostya Kennedy, the Sports Illustrated writer.
I'm familiar
that I
with the
encourage
book.
everyone. Yeah. You don't have to read it. Go to Barnes & Noble, open it up to page 229, and look at the footnote. And the footnote says the following. When Bart Giamatti, on that day, on that press conference, all the baseball writers were there, and he had a press conference, and somebody raised their hand and said, Commissioner, does this affect Pete Rose's ability to get into the Hall of Fame? And Bart Giamatti pointed to the writers and said, absolutely not. The Hall of Fame will be decided by you, the writers. You're the voters. And somehow, because he died 9 days later, Fay Vincent, Bud Selig, and now Rob Manfred have all ignored that statement. Forget what anyone else says, from Bart Giamatti himself. So he said Pete Rose should get into the Hall of Fame if the writers think so. You know what happened with the Pete Rose rule, bans for life. They passed that rule just to keep Pete Rose out of the Hall of Fame, and that's what happened. And oh, by the way, they messed up Shoeless Joe Jackson, who never fixed the 1919 World Series.
I'm with you with
We should do a
Shoeless
show on that, Bob.
No, we can do a show on that. In fact, I added my sports handicapper, Jake Schaefer, is on with us too. I want to go to the Pete Rose thing, and I'll tell you why. But you got to know my background. I grew up in a mobbed up, gambling, crazy neighborhood. Okay, but the good news is I got to appreciate the fact, especially when ball players didn't make that much money. There were a lot of ball players who, they didn't throw games, but if they owed the mob money, because there's a lot of gamblers in sports, as you probably know, they just give information on who was hurt, who was blah, blah, blah. Anyway, here's my point, and I've changed on this over the years. First of all, I would never let him in a dugout or on a team again. There has to be a punishment for gambling, because having seen what I saw, You can't have it because it takes the integrity away. However, his performance on the field was an unmitigated great success, and he belongs in the Hall. And I think
100%.
that's the way I'd have handled it.
No, you're 100% right, but the problem is for some reason they put the two together, and that was never Giamatti. Again, forget everybody else. That was never Bart Giamatti's goal. His goal was to keep him out of baseball for that time period, which he did. Now that's forever, as it should be, as you just said. But the Hall of Fame had nothing to do with him being banned for life in the eyes of Bart Giamatti. How this got stood on its head is because Bart Giamatti died 9 days later.
Well, yes. Now, I want to move on to another issue that you might find interesting.
A-Rod.
Oh, you want to talk about... Would you put A-Rod in the Hall?
I would not put A-Rod in the Hall of
Why?
Fame. A-Rod
Wait,
admitted...
hold on. Jake is on with us.
The one that bothers me the most is Albert Bell. I think Don Mattingly had 5 great years. Albert Bell, I think, put together 9 or 10 as good as Mattingly's. That's who
How
I
come
would...
he's not in the Hall? What do you think?
Oh, Albert Bell is absolutely a Hall of Famer who's not in the Hall. The problem is you have guys over the year, and this is the writer's bias. They don't like you, or they don't talk. You don't talk to them. Albert Bell was one of those guys.
Yeah.
And I'd put Jeff Kent in, although he's not Albert Bell. He's one of the greatest second basemen ever. A sullen guy. Nobody liked him. The writers hated him, and I think these guys pay for it. Jim Rice got in on the. You know Jim Rice, Bob Marrone, of course, and he got in on the last ballot.
He
the
could
last year
swing
he could
that
get
bat.
in, he got in.
He could swing that bat.
Right, and you talk about Munson. I would say in the late 70s, Jim Rice was the most feared hitter in baseball.
I remember.
If you were a Yankee fan, a Red Sox Yankee thing,
My
when he walked up,
God.
you were like, oh, no, not this guy again.
I feel the
Yeah,
same way about Bell.
They should be in, but the problem is more of an attitude that the writers didn't like.
No.
I use Jeff Kent because a lot of people will say it's a racial thing, and maybe with Albert Bell to some degree it is, but Jeff Kent was equally sullen. Go look at his numbers. I mean, after Rogers Hornsby, he's probably, and some might say, a better power hitter than Rogers Hornsby,
Let me
the
ask you a
greatest second
question.
baseman of all time.
You go back to my time a little bit. Did Richie Allen get in? Dick Allen? I can't remember.
No, I don't think he's in the Hall of Fame.
Because he was the
And
first sourpuss. And then Dave
Yeah.
Kingman was the sourpuss, but
Yeah.
not that kind of a player. But let me ask you about another guy, because this is where the writers surprised me. A guy who simply didn't talk to the press, Murray from Baltimore, he got in, though, on the first ballot.
Yeah, switch hitter, I think 504 homers, I
Yeah,
want to say.
great ball
Some
player.
guys are so good, so beyond it all, that he got in. But yeah, a similar kind of guy, great player, championships, as I said. I hope I have that number right, 504 homers.
Yeah, I believe you do.
But a switch hitting power hitter, we all think, of course, Mantle first. But Eddie Murray, not that far behind.
I think one of the reasons they keep him out of I think that the whole issue with gambling, I'm sure baseball knows even more than I do because of where I grew up about how much gambling, particularly when ball players weren't paid much. There was a lot of gambling in the sport and a lot of guys talking about who's hurt, blah, blah, blah. Baseball doesn't handle its scandals well. The reason I brought up Dave Kingman, and while we're on the subject of baseball, let me remind people, you're listening to Radio Westchester, Mornings with Bob Marrone. We have our August sports group with us, the sports editor of the Mount Vernon Post. He's a radio guy, a sports writer, Steve Callis.
Hey, Bob, Bob, if I could, because my boss will be furious if I don't say this, it's the WestchesterCountyPost.com now.
Westchester, she changed the name again, WestchesterCounty.com. Well, that's
County Post.
County Post.
WestchesterCountyPost.com. We got a lot of baseball articles up there as well.
Okay, thank you for that. No, you should do that, and you should do it just to correct me as well. Jake Schaefer's here, as well as Chris Conway. Most people, and I was so glad, it took me years before I read it, and this should not have been on the down low. This was a collusion issue. And maybe it was 84, 85. Forgive me if I don't remember the year. But Dave Kingman hit 34 home runs, 96 RBIs, or 93. And then there was nobody wanted to pick him up. Now, I know he was a miserable human being by all accounts. But it turned out, and this went under the radar, he won his collusion lawsuit. He was colluded against because of money. And baseball's very good at hiding its dirty laundry or pretending it doesn't have any. I've said this many times, and I want the reaction of all of you. I think everybody gets in the hall until they put the list of the 140 players that they knew did PEDs, but they cut a deal with the union to not out them. I think everybody gets in the hall.
Well, it's coming. David Ortiz is on that list, and I think he's going to get in. I think that's a problem for me. I don't agree all these guys should get in. If you give me a minute, I'll give you a brief thing on A-Rod, who might have been the longest cheater of all time. He admitted when he was at Texas for those 3 years, he admitted that he took PEDs in Texas, and his reason was because of the pressures of that initial incredible, I think it was $250 million contract that he signed. And then he admitted, of course, in 2009, right, that he had taken something the year before. Mm-hmm. So do you think when he went from Texas, who won games in the low 70s every year, and by the way, won, I think, 88 the year he left, do you think he went from Texas to Yankee Stadium and didn't feel the pressure and stopped taking him? I don't think anybody with a brain believes that. So the only question to me was, did he ever do steroids when he was at Seattle? Because once he's at Texas, that's virtually the rest of his career. That's the early 2000s. So there's a whole book somebody should write on guys who land on their feet like A-Rod and guys who don't. But I think he might have been the longest-running cheater on PEDs in Major League Baseball history. That's what I think.
Let me postulate something and get your reaction, Jake's too, Chris. It seems that when you play for the New York Yankees, it's like going to Lourdes. It washes away your sins. The left-hander I always forget. They treat him like a god. I don't think he's a Hall of Fame pitcher.
Andy Pettit?
Yes. Why does this guy get such a pass? I know he's a nice guy, but he did PEDs too.
Well, this is the reverse Albert Bell.
Yeah.
Right? That's what Andy Pettit is.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he's getting in.
I don't think he was a very good. Is he any better than Dave Koosman? I mean, Koosman's not in the Hall of Fame. He was a money pitcher.
And he's not better than Koosman, but because of the way the playoffs are now, he's the winningest postseason. I've written 3 articles about let's separate postseason from World Series home runs. It's like Mantle and Ruth are memories of the past for that number because of postseason homers. So Andy Pettit's got the most postseason wins in the history of baseball. But what does that mean when you had the World Series alone all those years? And then 69, when the Mets won the World Series, that was the first year they had, you had to win 2 series.
Yeah.
Now it's like an extra season just to make more money. We have wild cards, so if you're near 500, it's like football. Oh, we're 6 and 7, we can still make the playoffs if we run the table, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous, but that's what you have to do to keep the fans interested because there's too many other things.
Steve Callis, our guest, sports writer, sports editor for the Mount Vernon County. I got it. Let me correct myself. For the Westchester County Post.com. Okay, I think that was your boss on the phone. Call back and I'll click in. Anyway, I lose this debate all the time with Jake and Chris. I was looking at the Yankees getting ready to bring on Cole or who's the other guy from Washington?
Strasburg.
I still believe Strasburg should have gotten the Cy, but they don't agree with me. Where are you with this?
Should have gotten what?
The Cy Young. I mean, how do we give Cy Young awards now to 10 and 11 game winners because some geek in his basement with a spreadsheet says he should get it?
No, because Jake and Chris understand the analytics better than you, or I, for that matter. It all started when the King, Felix Hernandez, won 13 and 12. You could give it to Strasburg, but he got the MVP of the World Series.
Which he deserved.
There's no way a guy who wins 2 games. In the old days, 68, Mickey Lolich, you could pitch
the
games
fat
1,
man.
4, and 7. Actually, Lolich pitched, I think, 2, 5, and 7.
I remember.
But if you win 3 games in the World Series as a starting pitcher where these guys always went 8 or 9 innings, you should get the World Series MVP. Now, I don't think he should have got it. I wrote a column that's up at WestchesterCountyPost.com. Soto could have gotten it and should have gotten it. Rendon could have gotten it. It's just the World Series, as you know, not the playoffs, because you can't say Howie Kendrick should have gotten it. But I thought it was terrible that you win 2 games as a starting pitcher, and everybody went nuts because he won 7 innings both games. Remember, if you came out in the 7th inning in the old days, Bob, it was like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Now, if you come out for the 7th, you're like a hero. So I think you could have given it to him, but DeGrom and his numbers last year and this year are just incredible. But you're right. If it was 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, he would have barely gotten votes because wins were viewed to be so big. Nowadays, with analytics, wins are virtually meaningless. I totally disagree with that. I'd
Well,
love
so
to
do
hear
I.
what Jake and Chris
Yeah,
I'd love to
I
hear
want
what Jake
Jake
and Chris
is-
have to say about wins.
Jake is chewing on the microphone. Go ahead.
You know what's terrible though is you know what they call the World Series MVP award?
Wow.
It's the Willie Mays Award.
Oh, yeah, and he was terrible in the World
He
Series.
had
I
another
got it.
Yeah, you're
200 batting
right.
average in the World Series. It makes
No,
no
that's right.
sense
You're
to me
good. That's
whatsoever.
good.
You know, apropos of what you just said, by the way, I was reading, I reread Dave Dravecki's book, the guy who had arm surgery,
Yeah,
cancer,
broke
and then
his
lost
arm.
his
Yep.
arm. Do you know how different baseball was? And this is only the late 80s. It's not like it was 1,000 years ago. On his first game back, after having cancer surgery on his arm, having the bone frozen, having half the deltoid muscle taken out, he was disappointed that he only pitched 8 innings.
Well, again, it's a different mindset. You know, why do you need load management to make Kawhi Leonard the best player in basketball? All of this has changed, and I've written about this a number of times, Bob. And here's the question, maybe for Jake and Chris, because maybe they get it more than we do. But bigger, faster, stronger, no doubt about it. Nutrition, fabulous, off the charts, everything. Even the uniforms in baseball, those old wool uniforms where you'd sweat in a doubleheader when it's 100 degrees on Sunday. How is it these guys can't play 154, 58, 62
Beats
games?
me,
How
beats
is it
me.
these pitchers
They
can't go 8 or
overtrain.
9 innings every start? How is that?
Money.
I interviewed Dwight Gooden about this in person. He was sober that day. And only not that long ago, maybe 6-7 months ago. And we talked very specifically about that. He thinks that as a pitcher that they overtrain as pitchers. There's not enough general bodybuilding, and that they throw so hard that their bodies are almost their own enemies.
Yeah, I think it's throwing hard for as long as you can. You see a guy like Verlander who still can throw 97 in the 7th or 8th
Yeah,
inning
he has
today.
inspiration
but
at
that's
home.
what pitchers always talked about. Back in the old days, I'm talking Gibson and these kinds of guys who did not go 100% in the first few innings
Yeah.
to get the feel of the game, if you will. I think that's partly it, but I'm sorry, bigger, faster, stronger nutrition, everyone's better at everything. Yeah, and what happens? Oh, we need 7 relievers today, and that strikes me as ridiculous, and that's Tony La Russa's fault, by the way.
Well, yeah, but you know what? People do what works. But I'm going to give you an analogy. This is my last case for the Cy Young Award. Now, I'm with these other two. This is fake, okay? But let's pretend that I'm the best-looking guy in the room. It's probably true. The best-looking guy in the room, suave. I have the way with the women, but I strike out all the time. I don't do well. Maybe that's a bad analogy. But Chris, who is half vegetable, half animal, he's the one that every other week has a new hot chick on his arm. Who gets the award?
Oh, goodness gracious. I'm not sure I like that analogy.
Well,
Is
I
my
like
foot
it
on
because
the line?
winning
Bizarre
still
thing I've ever heard in
matters.
my life.
Winning still matters. Winning still matters.
Well, you should ask Chris and Jake, because to me, winning means something. If they get on here and say winning is meaningless, which is what analytics guys almost always say.
Well, let's get
that's
Jake.
Preposterous.
Jake
That's
is the
preposterous. Maybe
prince
these
of
guys
analytics.
Haven't played. Maybe they never pitched in the 8th or 9th inning. I'm talking the analytics guys now. Winning has to count for something, but I do agree it's not what it was in the past, nor should it be. But to me, win still means something.
To me, it's common sense. If I put a gun to your head, who do you want on the mound to save your life? Who would you pick?
That's a great way to put it, by the way.
Common sense.
I
would
would-
you take Strasburg or DeGrom? I would take DeGrom.
I'd take Strasburg.
Every day of the week, twice on Sunday.
Because what I want to know, and here's my point. I got a guy with a great ERA. He's got 2 guys on, 1 out in the 8th inning of a big game. Can he get through that inning and make that last step for the win? And
Yeah, but Bob, I think Jake and Chris would say, well, who cares? We can bring Mariano Rivera in now.
I was
It's not
just
like
thinking
the
of
old
that. I
days
knew
where
that.
Gibson gave up 2 home runs in the last inning of a World Series Game 7 to win 7-5, for example. So it's a different mindset. But I do think that you should ask those guys flat out, do wins count? And if they say no, they say no.
No, Jake said they count. Well, Jake, you didn't answer that question. And Chris, you're on the clock too.
You know, your analogy about whether the pitcher in the 8th inning with 2 guys on base and the low ERA.
It doesn't matter anymore.
That decision now is in the 4th inning or the 5th inning. That's no longer in the 8th inning. And if it's in the 4th inning, you know, you don't get a win if you don't pitch 5 innings. That's why I think people don't recognize wins as much, because the managers don't manage the win record.
In other
anymore.
words, they're not there to 7 or 8 innings. You know what? I have to defer to the 3 gentlemen on the microphones. Wins do matter a little less. They still matter, but they matter less because they're only asking the guy for 5-6 innings. Jake?
Quick question for Steve. Switching to the
I got to get his boss on.
NFC East. Do you think Daniel Jones is really hurt, or are you a conspiracy theorist?
No, I think he is really hurt. I don't think you're going to make a rookie quarterback walk around in a walking boot. So I do not think it's a
You don't think they're putting
theory.
Eli in just to get
No,
the crowd?
well, I don't think so.
No, you know what? If you told me it was a home game, I'd think about it.
Well, they got Dallas coming, right?
All right, folks.
Not this week. Next week, yeah.
Well, that's why I got you hit one of them. I got my panel of experts here, and I have 2 more issues, and then I got to try and get a hold of your boss. Gentlemen, I was going to ask you about Eli, but you answered it. And I'm going to ask this one again, though. If Eli should happen to really play well for real, do you think any teams next year will have an interest in him?
Sure.
I think he wants to play next year from what I can tell right now, and I think they will. And I heard you talking about Eli in the Hall of Fame, and I'll just say this. I heard a great analysis on NFL Network a few weeks ago, and it was said that Eli Manning is a Hall of Fame quarterback. This is Kurt Warner talking, Hall of Fame quarterback without Hall of Fame statistics, and I would agree with that analysis.
Jake?
I think he's definitely in. But what do you think about Rivers? I think that's the direct.
He's all wet.
I think Rivers is more the guy with great stats who never won anything. I think he's borderline. That's a debate. You know, the Football Hall of Fame between 4 and 7 guys every year, that's ridiculous because now there are going to be too many guys in the Football Hall of Fame. I've written you should have the Hall of Dominance within the Hall of Fame now. Just put 1 or 2 guys in every year. That'll never happen. But there's too many, I'll say it again, how is he in the Hall of Fame, or why should he be, or is he a Hall of Famer? You should never have that conversation, and if you don't ever want to have that conversation again, just put 1 guy in every year,
Chris.
and there'll be more guys on the outside looking in.
Let's see what Chris thinks. Eli Manning, Hall of Fame.
He'll make it, obviously, with the 2
That's not
Super
the
Bowls.
question, but do you think he belongs there?
I would lean no, but I mean, it's tough to argue against. If someone says, well, he won 2 Super
because
Bowls.
of the Super Bowls.
Yeah, I mean,
in a way.
there's
Well,
really no
hold
argument
it.
against
He beat the Patriots twice in the Super Bowl, and he beat an undefeated team, and he beat Brady and Belichick. So that counts for, in my view, more than just winning 2 Super Bowls, MVPs as well.
Oh, there we go to wins again. Ooh, interesting. All right, one more question before we let you go. This new owner for the Mets, they say Van Wegenen may be on his way out if that new owner comes in. What's your take on Wegenen? I'm dubious about this guy.
You give him 1 more year. If they don't make the playoffs, he's gone. This is his manager now, which was a weird hire.
Oh, boy.
You know, most Met fans I know, I'm not one, but most Met fans wanted, the group. It's hard now, though. They wanted Joe Girardi or Buck Showalter or, somebody of that ilk. Those guys are on the way out. Girardi, he knows the analytics. He's an intelligent guy, former catcher, obviously. The rumor is he took Philly. He wanted the Mets, and the Mets wouldn't hire him. But I think that's because Van Wagenen wants his own guy.
No, he doesn't want his own. He wants a lapdog.
He can kind of control him. Kind of goes back to the Art Howe mentality.
Yep.
Let's have an Art Howe type guy. I'm the GM. I want to run the show, and that's what I think you have with a lot of GMs today.
I think so, too. I think he wants a lapdog. Listen, Stephen, thank you very, very much. Steve Callis, you can read him, and I'm going to get it right. I think they got their name straight now.
No.
No, let me do this. The Westchester County Post.com.
That's it.
Is there still a Mount Vernon Post?
You have to ask Janelle about that. I think it's in the works maybe, but she would know more about it than I. I'm just a sports guy.
Oh man, my poor microphone keeps falling off. That's another thing I got to yell at the geeks about. They taped this whole thing up. So anyway, all right. Listen, thank you very, very much, Stephen. We will talk to you again next week. You may want to stay with us because Jake's picks of the week are coming up. So continue to listen in. We got to clear the line for our next series of guests. But thank you.
I'll be listening.
All
Thanks
right.
very much.
Thank you very much. First, we go to the weather with our main man, Chris Conway.
Good morning, Bob. Right now it is, as I pull up the temperature here, 32 degrees here in New Rochelle. It is cloudy. It will be cloudy through most of the day. We may get a mix of rain or even a snow shower, but the snow won't stick because the temperatures are expected to get into the mid-40s. Tonight, a few passing clouds. It will be breezy and cold with lows around 30 degrees. You have to excuse me, Bob just got up, which usually means the studio has a 10% chance of falling apart. Saturday, mostly sunny and cold with highs around 35. Sunday, mostly sunny skies with the temperatures in the low 40s. Monday and Tuesday, rain, but warmer in the mid-50s both days. And weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. It's voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris, as we get ready for the top of the 8 o'clock hour. And let's take a better look at this because I can't see it because I have the Wonder Wheel in front of me. Janelle Albritton, we may hear from her, but she had her sports editor on from the Westchester County Post.com. But right now we're getting ready for Jake's Picks, and all of this is brought to you this top of the hour by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit UHTC.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Dominic Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And we can't wait to get Jake's Picks, and it's coming right now. Jake's Picks of the Week. This week's football picks are brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7Ts, and after we talk with him, we'll be talking at 8:20 with Al Tarantino from New Rochelle, Dr. Victor Sternberg, then Hezi Aris. Jake's Picks of the Week here now is Jake Schaefer. Good morning, Jake.
Good morning.
And yesterday, by the way, we used this device to determine which games that he would pick. And I think we lost that sheet of paper, if you can get it for me.
The Wheel and I are off to a rough start to begin Week 14. We both lost with the Cowboys last night. So we'll try and pick things up.
Okay, you lost. What was the, let me see. What was the spread?
The Cowboys were favored by 3. Yes.
And what happened?
And they lost by 10.
Who beat them?
The Bears in Chicago.
That was a big surprise to you.
I was very surprised by that.
Okay, you now have to announce your
17, 12, and 1.
17, 12, and 1. I got to put my Christmas lights on. Okay, 17, 12, and 1. Okay, tell us about the official picks now that people will be looking at on Sunday.
All right, to me, the best game of the weekend is in Buffalo. The Bills are at home, and they are 5.5-point underdogs to the Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm not sure about either. Both teams are having a great year. Not sure about it, but I'm gonna take the Bills.
Oh, I thought you were taking the Ravens.
I will take the Bills, and I'll take the 5.5 points. I'm not sure the Bills are gonna win, but that's a pretty hefty point
so officially,
spread.
your official bet then is the Bills with the 5.5. Did anybody find my red light bulb? No, huh? Okay, go ahead. What about the Vikings game?
Well, the Wheel picked the Vikings game, I believe, right?
Yes.
I'm not picking. I will make my own picks. The Wheel makes his own picks. So I will go to. Let's do the Monday night game. This fascinates me.
Wait a minute. If you're going to compete with the Wheel, let's tell you what the Wheel did. The Wheel picked the Vikings and they took the 13. Who do you like in that game?
I would go with the Wheel in that one as well. I don't know who the Lions quarterback is going to be.
Okay, who are they playing?
They're playing the Lions. The Vikings are at home. Lions, iffy quarterback situation. Vikings have everything to play for. Lions have nothing. Good pick by the wheel.
Okay, what about the Bucks? The wheel chose the Bucks and they took 3.
I would have taken the Colts in this game.
Okay, so we could. Now, are you going to?
No, it's not one of my picks.
So that's not your official. So right now you've got the Bills. We're going to see how the wheel does and compare it, folks, because this is like the old thing. Should you just throw a dart at a board? Is it just as well? Should you spin to win, or should you follow our investment manager of gambling?
I told
Jake
you I
Schaefer?
tried to get a fortune teller to join us every Friday, but no fortune teller
we can
in
get
Westchester County would join us on the air.
We can get a fortune teller to do that. If you find me a fortune teller that's for real, I'm going to sell you a bridge from Brooklyn. Go ahead. Okay, so far you've taken the Bucks and the Bills.
What were the other wheel picks?
No, that's it. That's the wheel pick. So what are your picks for Sunday? Let's get down here. You take this.
All right.
Your picks for
Also,
Sunday.
I will take the Seahawks. It's a pick'em game. They're on the road against the Rams. I'll take the Seahawks in that game. There's no point spread whatsoever.
No points, but who they play? The Rams?
They're playing the Rams on the road, but I like the Seahawks in that one. I always pick the Seahawks.
So you got the Bills, the Bucks, and the Seahawks. Anything else you want to bet? Let's go to the Giant game.
The
that you
Giant
mentioned.
game
Who are they playing?
fascinates me. They're on the road against the Eagles. New quarterback, same as the old quarterback. It went from an 8.5 point spread when it was announced that Eli is in to a 9.5. I like Eli more than that. I don't understand.
Wait a minute.
that.
I get Eli with 9 points?
9.5. I'll take the Giants. I don't think they're going to win the game, but I'll take that 9.5
Me
points.
too. Well, what's the Eagles' record?
They are 5-7.
That's my lock of the week, ladies and gentlemen, because I get to pick one too.
Got to wait till Monday night, but
Mortgage the house on Eli.
I could. It was
Put the
an
kids
8.5.
up for adoption. Bring them.
8.5 points with Daniel Jones. Jones, they rule out. Goes to 9.5 with Eli. I don't understand that. So give
I'm
me
going
the
to
Giants.
show you how on the money I am. I'm going to pick what numbers are up there. What I can't let me see.
It goes to 24.
24, 22.
What happens if you get it?
It just shows my prognostication skills.
Oh, 23.
I was close, huh?
It almost went back to 22, actually.
Where's it? That? Yeah.
If it had hit 22, we would have ended the show early.
I would have ended this so early. We were all running to the track, gentlemen, if we did that. Jake's picks of the week. That's official. Give us a summary, Jake.
All right, so 17-12-1 on the year. The wheel is 0-2.
The wheel is 0-2, but Jake is 17 what?
12-1.
Okay, we've got 3 bets. One more time, summarize your 4 bets this week.
Bills at home getting 5.5. Seahawks on the road, a pick'em game against the Rams, and the Giants on the road getting 9.5. I think the Eagles will win the game, like the 9.5 points though.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Jake's picks of the week. They have been brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. We'll be right back with the sports scores and Chris Conway in a moment. All righty. That's a nice long pause. Chris, what's going on in the world of sports?
Well, we will start with the New York Knicks, who got embarrassed yet again last night, losing 129-92 to the Denver Nuggets at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks are now 4-18. They have lost 8 in a row. They have lost back-to-back games now by over 30 points. The first time in franchise history that has happened. Moving to the ice, the Rangers defeated the Columbus Blue Jackets 3-2. Terry Panarin scored a goal in his return to Columbus. The Islanders scored in overtime. They defeated Vegas 3-2 out on Long Island. Last night, Thursday Night Football, as discussed a few moments ago, Chicago defeated Dallas 31-24. Tonight on the ice, Montreal is at Madison Square Garden to take on the Rangers. Chicago in Newark to take on the Devils. And the Brooklyn Nets in the NBA are in Charlotte. And that's sports. I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. And I think we reached out and I think we got a hold of the managing editor of the Westchester County Post.com. Janelle Albritton, Are you there?
Good morning.
Hi, how are you? I want you to know that your man, your sports editor, did a very good job of making sure that I pronounced and announced the name of your newspaper correctly. And I just want you to know he did a very good job. I'm sure you listened. It was a good hit too, so we had a lot of fun. Now, how are you? What's going on in your world? As the managing editor, chief cook, bottle washer, and queen of media, the queen of all media.
Oh my goodness. I'll live up to that one day.
I don't know if you could see my Christmas lights on my head. I'm trying to get into the festive part of it. I look like an idiot, actually.
Oh, no, I don't have you on screen.
Okay.
But, well, let's see. I am been doing some research and learning a lot about how so many people in the world have discovered that dog deworm medicine is helping them clear themselves of all signs of cancer.
Wait a minute. Dog worm medicine is helping cure cancer in people?
Yep.
Okay. Where are this is anecdotal, or have there been real tests, the double-blind tests that are done? Or is it still anecdotal at this point?
There's evidence. Lots of people who have and I'm finding other research. I don't believe there's been a double-blind study on it, but I could be wrong about that. But there have been people who've been sent home, told to get hospice care because their cancer had metastasized and they had a 0 chance of recovery, and they were sent home to die. Started this protocol, and within a few months were pronounced cancer-free.
Really?
So I've got more information about it on my website.
What's the name of this? What is it? Because we got Dr. Sternberg coming up in 20 minutes' time. We'll ask him about this. What's the name of it? It's a dog worm medicine, heartworm or intestinal?
It's deworming medicine. I don't have the name on the tip of my tongue, but it's on the website WestchesterCountyPost.com. And if you click on Wellness Media for December, I've got links. I've got all kinds of links.
Now, where is this coming out of?
What
Is it? What kind of journals are you getting this from? Because it's healthy to be skeptic about this. I keep thinking when Steve McQueen went to Europe to, I think, Mexico, to have apricot juice pumped into his veins. You know what happened to him? He died. I'm just saying.
That doesn't sound good.
No. So what I'm saying is, yeah.
Well, this was originally just stumbled upon by a woman who was working with cancer research in mice in her laboratory, and they got worms. They got an infestation of worms. So she gave them the deworm medicine, and later discovered that they were cancer free. So as fate would have it, she was a cancer researcher. She was later diagnosed with cancer, and she decided to take this this animal deworm medicine, and in 12 weeks she was clear.
Did she bark at all? I'm just saying.
So
no.
And so other people, there's a lot of other people who have done the same protocol worldwide, and there's the Templeton Wellness Foundation is interviewing many people who are discussing this protocol and how it worked for them. And some of them didn't even start the protocol until after they'd done, regular chemotherapy and then been pronounced terminally ill. We're talking stage 4.
Okay. No, I hear you. I'm just always so dubious about these things because I keep thinking that some drug company could be on the precipice of making millions and doctors heroes. Has this gotten into the mainstream press yet? Is it really?
I'm working to make that happen. I've been doing a lot of research this past week, and I think it's something that we all need to pay more attention to.
Well, there are two books that are of great interest in this area. One's called The Transformed Cell, and it was written by Dr. Rosenberg, who heads up the National Institute of Health cancer section. And another one, it's about 4 years old now, the absolute greatest book ever written about cancer and how they treat it. And I got to reread it now. It's called The Emperor of All Maladies. And do you know how Rosenberg, why he got into cancer? He was a resident in a hospital, but like still training, if you will. And a patient presents with metastatic cancer. And as you just suggested, they sent him home to die, but gave him meds, take care of yourself. Come back in 3 months. We'll see if you need any further chemo.
If you're still alive.
No, as a matter of fact, when he came back in 3 months, he was cancer-free. And they were not able to figure out why or what. But what he inferred from that is there must be some mechanism that, and again, in his book, he wrote The Transformed Cell. It focused on what you're seeing a little bit more of now, which is using one's own immune system. So you never know what the trigger is, and his whole life has been trying to find that trigger. But that's what inspired him. I'm just saying, so I don't poo-poo what you're saying, but again, it needs to have rigorous testing.
Well, there is a bit of science behind it. I just texted you the link to this particular page. And Joe Tippins in the video discusses the 3 clinical explanations for how this works. And they know that that the dog deworm medicine attacks the particular kind of cell and collapses the microtubules that give the structure to the cell. So they help to physically collapse the cell, number one. Number two, they block the metabolic process so that the cancer cell cannot metabolize sugar. And then the third prong of attack is that it helps to increase certain markers in the immune system, not the T cells.
No, but the immune system is important. Now, one of the people that's quoted in the article that you sent, which I really appreciate, is a guy by the name of Anthony William. Now, you called him a medical medium. What is a medical medium?
He calls himself a medical medium. He encountered.
If I may be blunt, what a way to take away from your credibility. But go ahead.
Yeah.
A medium, really. I
totally agree.
I'm the space guru. It's another word. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Wow.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's there's no arguing with success, and from my personal experience, I can say that I have experienced some phenomena.
Well, that's good.
We'll describe it like that. I've experienced some pretty difficult to explain circumstances that wouldn't make sense to anyone who wants scientific proof. And so I'm already in that space of being open to the wild and wacky. Plus, I'm from California, so I've got that, advantage as well. But Anthony William is very clear about not trying to prove everything that he's talking about, because there's not a lot of money in doing research into what he's talking about.
I understand that, but I also wonder if this is so. Do we know if it, for example, works on the hundreds of cancers that are there, liver cancer versus lung cancer, which is a different cell type, blood cancers, et cetera. Does it work on all cancers? Is it so, if you will, holistic that it works on just about every type of transformed cell?
Well, so first of all, I don't want to conflate this dog deworm medicine with Anthony William. He has not made any comment about this at all that I know of. So I don't want your listeners to get confused about that. Anthony William is more aligned with the celery juice trend. And just to answer your question, then I'll go back to the cancer. Anthony William says that when he was 4 years old, he encountered the spirit of compassion who informed him that his purpose in life was to help people get healthy. And so he started consulting personally one-on-one with people, and he was so successful to the point where physicians started hearing about him and taking their so-called mystery illness cases to him, and he would help physicians find solutions and figure out how to help their patients who just kept getting sicker.
Okay, where can people read this? I just realized I'm coming up on the clock. My apologies. This is really interesting stuff. Again, my guest and talking, this is just some of the kind of work that appears in her newspapers, et cetera. Of course, we're talking about the Westchester County Post.com. She's the managing editor and publisher. She's a public health professional with a master's in public health, obviously a publisher as well, does a lot of other things. We encourage you to go to that website and see these kinds of things regarding wellness. Thank you very, very much.
My pleasure, Bob. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
Okay, the pleasure's always ours, and I am now going to get... Why would it put this second? All righty, we have coming up the city councilman from District 2 here in New Rochelle. Please welcome, he's going to answer any second, we know he is. That's what it sounds like. Okay, he's not picking up, he must still be trying to call me. He is unavailable, but we'll try one more time. That happens.
Call has been forwarded to an automated.
He'll call back. There he is. There he is. All righty. Please welcome, without further ado, the lone Republican. He is. There's this man, and then there's President Trump, and there aren't many Republicans here in New York in between he and Mr. Trump. Very successful and popular city councilman here in New Rochelle's District 2. Please welcome Al Tarantino. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
It's great to have you on, and I can't believe I gave you that kind of compliment, but it was in order. What does it feel like to be a Republican in Westchester County? You must feel like a donut at a Weight Watchers meeting.
Yeah, it's like I feel like I should be in one of the museums. An exhibit.
You may as well be. Hey, listen, we've had a lot of calls and a lot of talk, and we spoke with the mayor about it on Monday. And he thinks that we may well see changes in the budget as a result of men and women like yourself on the council who may push back on some of that stuff. Right now, there's a small increase in the budget under the cap, number one and number two. But one of the larger concerns is the water outflow fee to pay for infrastructure. And infrastructure most people felt was, or at least they thought, was covered by the bond that was done a couple of years ago. What is your take on all this, and where do you think we're headed?
Well, as the mayor said here, we're working on the budget. My goal I would love to see a zero. We have to see where we can get with this, but we're working on it. On a Tuesday, we'll have a better handle on where we are. As far as that outflow fee. It's a fee, and I know nobody likes it. I don't like it. But again, either we put it in a fee or we put it onto the property tax. And the difference, and people seem not to understand this, that when it's put on as a fee, it goes to everybody. It means that every single property, whether it's a religious institution, a educational institution, everybody's going to pay the fee. When you put it on tax,
I like that.
It's only, it's only taxed to taxable properties. So it adds more people putting money, toward the sewer as opposed to less people putting money. So it actually reduces the amount of money necessary to attain the goal that you're trying to attain. And the other issue people have is the concern that this is being done strictly because of the development. Part of it is, and the other part is just infrastructure improvement and expansion. This has to be done at some point in time, and now seems to be the right time to do it. So the object is to improve your infrastructure with the least impact on the community, and this is what the attempt is going to be. I mean, we're going to be discussing this again on Tuesday.
Yeah, it should be interesting
yeah.
because what I remember, and it doesn't mean I remember accurately. So let me put that caveat there. But I remember when that we floated that bond a few years ago. I don't know if it was $10 million or what it was. It made perfect sense, and as I recall, the purpose for that bond was to in effect prepare the city for the development. Now, no one can hold everybody to every penny. We probably have more development than we even expected, but that's the kind of questions that the public's going to ask. That didn't cover it evidently, and probably because it was more specific than we thought.
Yeah, I think again, I think the community and council and administration, we dropped the ball. We should have been clearer on how much money it would cost to actually upgrade.
Well, that makes sense. Sure, yeah.
The bulk of the sewer system and the storm drain system. As you know, the system is probably over 100 years old.
It's my age, yeah, I know.
So, yeah, it's around the same age from you, right? But we have a lot of leakage into the system. One of the reasons why you have the problems in the sound a lot of times is because when the sewer system, is at capacity, it leaches into the storm drain system, and storm drain system leaches into the sewer system. So the goal is to fix these problems, expand it so that it can handle the flow that comes through. The system couldn't handle what we had before. So obviously there had to be an upgrade to be able to handle the additional buildings. Also, every building that is built, every unit is going to be responsible for paying their fair share of this sewer tax.
Well, that is
fee.
And as I understood it, and that's even if it stays as it is. How much does it come to? Like $60 a year or $30 a year? Do we even know?
It's about $60 a year. And the interesting thing is if you took that same thing, if you tried to attain the same goal on the property tax, it would cost over $100 per person.
For the aforementioned reason that it doesn't apply to everyone. All the nonprofits and the colleges wouldn't pay their fair
the
share.
homeowner is actually, getting a lower rate because of doing it this way. But, again, people will argue one way or another, and they're entitled to. And, it's going to be the goal of the city council to come up with a solution to this problem.
Now, something I know, and we're talking with Al Tarantino, District 2 city councilman here, very well-known, popular figure in this town. He has to be, as the lone Republican, I think, in the county, save a couple of others. I think there's a tax collector somewhere. At any rate, you have spoken eloquently about this, about your concerns, so we know that you're on the job with this, but that we are losing retail in the interim as new buildings go up and the infrastructure is being worked on, lots of parking issues, commuting issues because of road blockages. You have a business in the downtown. How much is it affected, and how are you all putting your heads together to deal with this going forward?
Well, there's no question it's affecting us. I hear complaints every day from customers complaining about having a difficult time getting downtown. I just tell them be patient, and the thing that I'm not shy to tell you is it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better.
Thanks for the good news.
It's unfortunate, but you have different utilities all working at the same time. You have the water, you have gas, electric, sewer. Everything is going on in different places at different times. And if you slow it down or you stop it, what you do is you lose the contractor. He goes off to another job, and then you wait even longer. It's either, it's like having
pay me now or
tooth.
pay me
You
later.
pull it now or wait later, and you're still going to have to do it. So, it's something that we're going to have to live through. I'm more concerned about the business retention. As you know, a number of businesses have closed over the last month or so.
Yes.
And that's concerning to us.
Now, they're closing. Do you think they'll be back? I know one of the concerns is that, and I know the mayor spoke about this the other day as well, that the new entities, the new buildings, the cost of their retail space is high, that we may need to arrive, that is, the city may need to arrive at some accommodation with, or the businesses or the developers arrive at an accommodation with the city to maybe have interim rents that are more affordable. Have you heard about that at all?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing you can do. But, the other thing is that when a renter is in one of these smaller buildings that are operated by a landlord, an individual landlord might own one building, two buildings, even three buildings in downtown, there's a different relationship between the landlord and the renter. When you go into these bigger buildings, it's very corporate, and in most of the smaller buildings, you're paying rent, and you're not paying taxes and water and all the other expenses. You're paying, basically a rent, and then your Con Ed. In these other buildings, you pay for almost everything, and it creates a higher rent. Number one, but number two, to qualify to get into these buildings, you have to show significant assets. A lot of entrepreneurs who go into these smaller locations and want to open up a little, restaurant or a business, a retail business, they're operating on a shoestring.
Are you talking to me?
They will not be able to get into these buildings because it'll be very difficult when they do background check, credit checks, and things like that. So I think it's a lot different. You got more of a corporate mentality in these buildings, and you see it in the buildings that they've already built.
Yeah.
The people are in and out, or the buildings are empty for years and years, and they're not very flexible. So we're gonna have to lean on them a little bit to be more flexible.
I call it
with these businesses.
I call it institutional inertia. It's like trying to deal with a bank these days, where they know what you just said is correct, but they don't know who it is who should fix it. Anything you'd like to shout out about?
Well, just that, be careful riding through the downtown. And another thing is, we're going to try to do better at putting up signage to let people know detours, because I know I've gotten complaints that you are on top of the project before you realize that you shouldn't have gone down that street.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to incorporate something where we can put up additional signage for detours. And also, I've asked the city manager to look into this, some way of sending out an alert that if there are streets that are going to be closed or blocked off, that we send out the message to the public that to avoid these locations.
Well, let me share something that you can use. And I know I'm being nasty, but they earned it. You can always say, hey, it ain't Pelham. You can say, what the torture that they're putting people through in Pelham is that they'll actually have one detour, and it sends you down to where now there's another detour, a second detour, not related to the first detour. Don't even get me
we have a little
just
bit,
say we're not
a little
Pelham.
bit of that also.
Just say you're not Pelham, and it'll be fine.
Oh, okay.
That's just use it for that, and it's just been a nightmare. And I know it's necessary, but boy, somebody's got to do a better job. Anyway, I'm sorry. I shouldn't get into my own frustrations.
That's okay.
It's enough to drive
You're
me nuts.
entitled.
Well, listen, it is always a pleasure. Al Tarantino, District 2 here in New Rochelle. Thank you for looking out for our interests. Keep it up, sir.
Okay, thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too. We go next. One quick read on the weather, and then we go to one of our favorite guests for years now. He is the former host, although he still holds that portfolio. He'll be doing it again. The longtime radio host of Politics in Your Health, Dr. Victor Sternberg. He's already on hold. We'll get to him in a moment. But first, Chris has a weather report.
Good morning. It is 32 degrees here in New Rochelle. Today, a mix of sun and clouds, mostly clouds, but also some scattered rain, maybe even a snow shower or two. It won't stick, though, because the highs will be in the mid-40s. Tonight, a few passing clouds, breezy and cold with lows around 30. Tomorrow, mostly sunny but cold with highs around 35. Sunday, sunny skies, temperatures in the low 40s. Monday and Tuesday, rain but warm in the mid-50s both days. Weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. It's voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. As we head to the bottom of the hour is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena & Kahn, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and Dominic's Cigars. They brought you Jake's Picks of the Week, and of course on Monday we will review those picks again with you. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. It is 8:35 on the Smacker, and now we go to the aforementioned guest. You remember his long-running shows on WVOX and WFAS, and now a regular guest with us, Dr. Victor Sternberg, periodontist by trade, but his real concerns are prevention and how the politics of this great nation affects your health. Good morning, Dr. Sternberg.
Good morning, Bob, on this beautiful Friday morning. Thank you.
It's great to have you on. And, Doctor, I don't know if you were listening earlier, but I tried to be polite and not too cynical when I was talking to a public health professional who does a lot of pieces and articles and stuff on, what's the right thing I'm trying to say here, on wellness. And she talked about these, and I know it's anecdotal, but evidently there are people that are taking the medicine that they use to deworm dogs, and that it's curing people with stage 4 cancer. Now, I have to be frank. She's a very well-respected woman, a smart woman, but and she's only reporting what she heard. But I'm dubious about this stuff.
Bob, we live in a world where people are searching for answers out of the box, because very often conventional chemotherapy and treatment of cancer is not successful. So it's natural that people would gravitate to find other answers in a desperate attempt to save their lives. It's interesting you brought that up, Bob, because I was going to bring something up about vitamin C today.
Go ahead.
Ironically, my last patient yesterday, who I've treated for over 40 years, who had severe periodontal disease, came into my office, and I was examining her mouth. And there were a couple of teeth that have been always bleeding and always were difficult to maintain. And for the first time in 40 years, I could not get her gums to bleed no matter how hard I provoked them. The tissue was healthy. And I said, "What's going on with you?" And she said, "Well, you know what, Dr. Sternberg, I've been taking 16,000 milligrams of vitamin C every day for about a year." And I said, "Well, I cannot tell you there's much evidence, because vitamin C was originally discovered as a way to treat scurvy, as people who weren't getting vitamin C in citrus fruits developed this serious disease. But there's not a lot of evidence that taking a vitamin C extra pills makes a difference." But here she was taking mega doses. The average dose she's supposed to take is 75 milligrams. She was taking 16,000. So I made note of that, and I said, "That's interesting. I'm an open-minded guy." So I went home and did a little homework on vitamin C last night. And it turns out there is some evidence that mega doses, I'm not talking about your vitamin store, I'm not talking about pills, I'm talking about intravenous vitamin C given in grams, not milligrams, has an effect upon preventing cancer cells from multiplying.
See?
And there's some anecdotal evidence, and unfortunately there's been no studies done adding that to chemotherapy. And I'm just throwing that open as, there's always a nugget of truth in many things.
Well, yes, Doctor. And just apropos of that, this particular remedy that my colleague was talking about, we need to be open to these things. There may be something to it. And
unfortunately, because of the economics of pharmaceutical companies, everything that's developed and tested has a price tag associated with it.
Money, yeah.
And so, this vitamin, so I'm going to look more into it, because I've read some interesting articles. And the problem is that we do not live in a society where people are open for either they're closed-minded for intellectual reasons, or they're closed-minded because of economic reasons. I'm throwing out there, folks, that this may be, I don't discount anything. The smartest guy is not the guy that knows everything. The smartest guy or woman is the person that learns from everybody else. So I'm not going to discount anything, except I would urge people to not seek out things on just somebody's hearsay. And here's an example of vitamin C, which has been touted by Linus Pauling and others, but has fallen on the dustbin of science. And so it's anecdotal that this may have some value for some patients.
It's really interesting stuff. And then what happens, though, is, I'm going to write a book one day called Layers. By layers, I mean there are always layers to these stories. Give you an example. One of the people in the article that my colleague sent to me was taking advantage of people who are, I'm going to say, hocus pocus freaks. And he called himself the medical medium. What a way to take away your credibility in one fell swoop. It's like when I get publicists call me, by the way, this is the mystical mom or the cookie mom. If they got these kind of handles, please don't put them on my air. Go call Oprah. Just don't put them here. So but those people wind up taking away from something that should be looked at with perhaps real intensity. So there's a snake oil salesman even in the legitimate world.
Yeah. Bob, aspirin, which was just found in nature growing as a plant, has been one of the most effective drugs ever developed.
Yes.
And it came out of doesn't cost anything and has great value and was growing in nature. So, there is knowledge that we have, but there's a big void in the way we approach expanding our universe. And one of the medical issues I want to bring up in terms of possible breakthroughs in medicine, there was an interesting article, I don't know if you read it this week, that Israeli scientists have found a particular enzyme that they gave to mice that had transplanted human pancreatic cancer. They took pancreatic tumors, they transplanted them to mice, and they used an enzyme which prevented the pancreatic cancer cells from multiplying, from growing. And within 2 weeks, 90% of the tumors were gone, and one of the animals was completely gone. And this is the first study I've read that showed that just by altering the ability of cells to grow, and this was, fortuitous, but it was interesting. They're going to begin to do research on mammals now, and hopefully they can fast track this because we know that this disease has really no hope for patients that receive it. But it was an interesting sidebar coming out of a study done in another country. And again, the future of mankind's knowledge is in the hands of billions of people from around the world, and we should always be open to learning from each other. Absolutely. And hopefully we can report that this will be a breakthrough for us.
An interesting thing about cancer, and this is just something as a layman who likes to read books about it, that I've always wondered is, rather than treat the 100 forms of cancer, there obviously, one day I would like to think that they'll discover a way to maintain the integrity of the cell. But then when you look into genetics, cancer is in the genetic world. I mean, it's there. It's just one more feature of genetics. So, how do you make? It's like the illness I use is what's the one where your lungs fill with
emphysema?
No, it's genetic, and I'm just having a mental block.
Cystic fibrosis.
Cystic fibrosis. You can't cure it because it is you. It is literally the genetics that you were born with. So,
well, they're working very hard though to find a way of altering the genome of patients who have this gene. I mean, we have not been successful, but there's going to be in the future the ability to alter that genetic code that produces that aberration, which will be a huge breakthrough. As far as cancer goes, our cells are mutating all the time, Bob.
Yeah, so we can...
Mutation is a natural process.
So what...
And the problem is...
Is it fair to say that maybe, I'm sorry, we can mutate them to the good?
Well, it's the challenge is that once they mutate into cells that grow without any inhibition, because that's what cancer is. Cells don't have a turn-off switch. Once that happens, we have to find a way to selectively turn those cells off because they are different. And that's the search in cancer therapy. How do you turn that cell off without turning off all the normal cells? We know why chemotherapy is so horrible, because it kills a lot of the normal tissue in our body. Interesting enough, this study in Israel found this enzyme did not affect any other cells except the cancer cells, which was a very positive thing.
That is a positive thing. My guest is Dr. Victor Sternberg, the host of Politics in Your Health. It is in repose right now, but it will be back soon enough. He is a periodontist by trade. Doctor, there was a piece 2 days ago, I think, about something you've talked about for years on the air, which are different types of ways to deal with the human papillomavirus and the inoculations against it. They want to make it law in some states now. How do you feel about that? That you'd have to take the vaccine.
I think the vaccine, measles. I don't know if you read this week, Bob. 140,000 people this year died from the measles worldwide. And so how do I feel about that? I feel that, Bob, that if you have the potential to infect another human being by your behavior, that human being has a right to be protected from you. So I see that protecting the health of others is enough of an admonition for me to mandate that everybody get vaccinated for the measles, for chickenpox, for meningitis for many people, young people who die from that, and from the human papillomavirus. I mentioned last week that there's been a huge growth in incidence of anal sex, and it's directly related to the human papillomavirus.
You mean
it's a very serious disease.
Well, and what you're talking about is anal cancer as a result of anal
cancer, right?
Yes.
And this line we cross of freedom, my freedom versus the well-being of others. This is a debate we have in our country about what freedom is about. But freedom does not include, in my opinion, the ability or possibility of hurting another person. That's not freedom.
Doctor, but what do we do about the fact that there are still groups, very energetic groups, very adamant groups, that feel that the problem is the vaccine? I don't know what to say to people.
Bob, you know what, Bob? We cannot continually deal with the marginal views in this country and give them credibility. There are marginal views. Listen, didn't you read recently that 53% of Republicans believe that Donald Trump is a better president than Abraham Lincoln?
No.
What am I supposed to have? Am I supposed to have a debate with you about that?
No.
Certain views, Bob, I will not give any credence, even though they're held by people dearly. If we give every view credence, we're going to go nowhere as a culture.
Well, I sometimes feel that way about certain aspects of religion, because you've got people that again use religion as a basis for not getting inoculated, and I've always, this is an interesting thing, and the health is more the subject of this show, but since we also talk politics, religion that way is a slippery slope, because in fact, I think Bill Maher famously said in one of his shows one day, and it was very controversial. He says, I'm not sure we should always respect religion to the degree that we do, because it allows us to do things that don't make sense. And there's some truth to that.
Bob, the foundation of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism is based upon a couple of principles. Mm-hmm. And one is, do unto others as you would have others do unto you.
Yes.
That is probably the fundamental principle of religion. And if you do unto others what you don't want to have done to yourself, then you're violating the essence of the religion.
But what if a religion says that I'm not supposed to be vaccinated? You are then violating the essence. I totally agree with you. What do you have in your quiver? I always have a million questions, but I know you.
Okay, there's a couple of things that are interesting. Yesterday's report that 6 million high school and junior high school students have been vaping in the last 30 days. 1/3 of high school students, 1/8 of junior high school students, the vast majority using e-cigarettes. We have unleashed a public health hazard, and our government has been, again, as they were with the opioids, negligent and asleep and influenced by big industry.
Yeah, I was going to say asleep.
This is a scandal.
Asleep or too concerned about business to make a difference.
Absolutely, Bob. The president was going to come out with something on vaping, just like we would come out with rules on guns. It's clear. This is very clear for audience, and I'm sure we can debate this, but to me it's not debatable. Changes that affect the public good are strongly opposed by interests that will be affected financially, and they usually triumph over the will of the people. And unfortunately, it's a distortion in democracy.
Well, we had that right here. I don't know if it was in Yonkers, so don't hold me to it, but it was in one of our medium-sized or larger cities here. There was a vape shop that they closed, and the vape guy said, well, no, I'm going to go broke. So, all right, they reopened it. That's absurd.
Yeah. Well, Bob, this is the distortion. I call it the power of the minority, and that's what we have in our culture. We have to have a greater good philosophy. We cannot. Every individual has certain rights under our Constitution, but again, when those rights trample on the rights or well-being of others, what do we have the wisdom? Here's the good question, Bob. Are we wise enough for a society to stand up to these special interests? And right now, I think the answer is no. I hate to tell you that, Bob, but that's how I feel.
No, but even if you do, on both sides, you risk being caught. I mean, right now, we live in an environment where anything can be rebuked, no matter how clear and present it is. We live in an environment where Kellyanne Conway can tell you that the world is flat, and you have to accept.
Well, that's freedom. That's freedom of speech, Bob. And unfortunately, when they wrote the Constitution, freedom of speech has as an unfortunate sidebar the ability of people to distort or lie and get away with it in the name of free speech. And, struggle. Just like the right to bear arms is a struggle. These are things that wisdom has to triumph over the law, but unfortunately it does not. So we have to put up with Kellyanne Conway, just like we have to put up with other people who are nefarious in their views. Mm-hmm. It's an unfortunate consequence of freedom.
No, it is, but it also lends its way into, let's just go back to tobacco. We had these captains of that industry lie to us when they were even baking extra nicotine into it to hook us even more.
In my opinion, Bob, there is no difference between people that sell opioids as harmless drugs between them and tobacco sellers. They are both merchants of death. And unfortunately, because of their financial clout, they've both been allowed to kill many, many Americans.
Now, let's go to one of our favorite topics. And I remind people, my guest is Dr. Victor Sternberg, the longtime host of Politics in Your Health, heard on many radio stations here in Westchester. And eventually you'll hear him again here. You know you will. Doctor, no progress, zero, is being made on health insurance and health care.
Yes.
After all these debates, after the current administration said repeal and replace, you'll have better health care. After the President Obama did what he could do, but then he said we can keep our doctors, and we didn't. Obamacare is still there, but now it costs too much because to the government, although no one seems to care about that because they dropped the mandate. Has anyone working on this? Do you hear anything about this?
No. Bob, right now, the only thing you hear about is what's going on in the Congress right now with the impeachment trials. All substantive issues have come to a standstill under this administration. All substantive issues that affect the well-being of the American people. The only thing you can say has happened for the positive is the American economy is doing better. More people are working. The national debt is increasing. And that's about it. All the issues that affect my ability to pay health care insurance, my employee's ability to pay health care insurance, the cost of an education. I'm sitting outside the dental school right now. I'm going to spend time with students that have $500,000 in debt. Mm-hmm. Do you think this is okay in a modern society?
No.
That you're going to put somebody in debt for the rest of their life because they want to be professional? No conversation about the cost of education. These issues are ignored because the institutions that have the power are just running the Congress in circles, and that's the way it is, Bob. We've made no progress, and I don't see any progress coming, Bob. I wish I was we've talked about this, Bob. We've had many years to deal with these issues. We are such a politicized country that we can't even decide today's Friday without arguing about it.
No, it's really true, and it's the worst aspect of a democracy that's caught in gridlock. A lot of people, yourself included, are getting letters in the mail and saying, hey, in fact, I think it ends in a day or two. You have got, folks, to redo your Medicare. It is mind-numbing to compare these products. Mind-numbing. How do they expect the average guy or gal that works for a living, that's got kids in school or grandparent, to sit down and compare these plans? It's almost impossible.
Well, this is what happens, and I'm not arguing for a national health care service or Medicare for all, but this is what happens when you have a free market in health care you expose people to so many different views and choices that most people, with some exceptions, are incapable of figuring this out. You've taken a very important issue, my health care, and made it into a complicated choice. And, again, it's like filling out your tax return. It should be one page. Remember, for years they saying it's going to be one page. If you look at your tax return,
right.
Bob, it probably looks like a book.
It is like a book. Or there was a case. A member of my family said, "Oh, look at this. If I use this new plan, I don't have to pay a premium for the for the extended care after basic Medicare." And I said, "Let me see that. How many doctors do you have? How many specialists? 7 or 8? Do you know you're going to be paying co-pays to them? Forget it." And then they want you to list every damn medication you're taking and see if they cover it. People don't have the time for this.
Bob, we can have a conversation about Medicare because I receive it. And just as a sidebar, despite having paid in as a businessman for the last 45 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars in Medicare tax, every month I pay $750 for the right to have Medicare.
Yep.
Okay? Just to put it in perspective, that's $9,000 a year. And I'm not knocking it, but I'm just saying the system is if anybody thinks that Medicare is the answer for all, just be aware we're all going to pay for it in different ways. Bob, one last thing I want to get to before we end this call.
Yes.
There was recently, there's been a joining of unions and drug companies who are opposing any attempt to put price controls on drugs. Did you know that, Bob? Unions and drug companies.
No.
And here's you can't write this stuff. Obviously, the drug companies don't want price controls. They contend that if we control prices or negotiate them, that there'll be less new drugs for people. It'll damp down innovation. That's their argument, okay? And obviously, I get their point because the money at the drug industry is enormous. But the unions joined it because unions are afraid of any price controls in things that might affect their companies and their union workers. So here you have two people that are self-serving, two groups that you would think would be enemies, have joined together to put out the propaganda that any attempt to damp down drug prices will be the end of healthcare innovation. This is what happens, Bob, when you try to make inroads into the cost of any item, whether it be education or healthcare, because the powers that be will pollute the airways with misinformation and disinformation, and the public will buy it, unfortunately, and that's where we are today. That's why hospitals will not allow opaque. They allow no price controls, no posting of their fees. The same thing with drug companies. We're dealing with a monolith of power that does not want to lend itself to the light of day.
My goodness. Well, we'll end on that note. How long are you at graduation time yet? How long are these students in this program?
We have 6 months left for our seniors. In fact, I'm going in there getting ready for their board exam. They have a lot of learning to do. So hopefully I can turn out a couple of good dentists for the community.
Yeah.
And I'll look forward to speaking to you next week, Bob.
Thank you very much. Dr. Victor Sternberg, everyone, the host of Politics and Your Health. You know he will be doing that again. It is 8:58. We're going to check the the weather. Traffic's not coming for another couple of weeks. We're going to share the weather with you. We're going to share the sports scores with you. And then I'll hit a couple of headlines. And then we'll talk with the managing editor and publisher of the Yonkers Tribune, Hezi Aris. Good morning, Chris. Did it warm up? No, it's still 32.
Still 32. It is December, so it's not going to get much higher.
They said 44. You said 44 at 6 o'clock.
It should get to around 44 degrees, but that won't be till the afternoon. It's going to be a cold morning. We will have some rain or maybe a snow shower or two mixed in the forecast today. Tonight, a few passing clouds, breezy and cold with lows around 30. Saturday, mostly sunny and cold with highs around 35. Sunday, sunny skies, highs in the low 40s. Monday and Tuesday, rain but warmer in the mid-50s. Weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Let's do sports.
Moving to sports, the Knicks get embarrassed yet again. They lose at home to the Denver Nuggets 129-92. It is the Knicks' 8th straight loss. They are now 4-18, the first time in franchise history they've lost back-to-back games by 30 points. You have to wonder what the future holds for Knicks head coach David Fizdale. Moving to the ice, the Rangers won in Columbus 3-2. Terry Panarin scored a goal in his return to Columbus. The Islanders defeated Vegas 3-2. Ryan Pollock scored his 4th goal of the year in overtime to give the Islanders the 2 points. Thursday night football, Chicago 31, Dallas 24. And tonight, 3 locals in action. The Brooklyn Nets are in Charlotte. Montreal is at Madison Square Garden to take on the Rangers. And the Chicago Blackhawks are in New Jersey to take on the Devils. And that's sports. I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. We'll take a quick look at the headlines, and then we'll get right to Hezi Aris, the managing editor and publisher of the Yonkers Tribune. This tough story out of Pleasantville, and they're still working on it. 2 children and 2 adults, apparently from the same family, were found dead in a Romer Avenue home yesterday afternoon. This out of Lowharder News 12. The young children never showed up for school, which prompted a wellness check at 57 Romer Avenue shortly before 2 p.m. That's when the tragic scene was discovered, and the community is reeling. The mayor, Peter Scherer, said during a Thursday evening news conference that it is a tough time. The school superintendent, Mary Fox Alter, who is clearly shaken and holding back tears, said, "As you can imagine, our hearts are broken at the news of this incredible tragedy in that town of 8,000 people." And it happened in a very busy area near the middle and high schools and the library. The 2 superintendents said the schools will be open Friday and counselors will be available. Then they've not released the names, Chris, because they want to be sure to get a hold of the extended family, and it's not known what led to this. Speaking of tragedies involving children, this out of News 12 today, the Rockland father accused in the hot car deaths of his 1-year-old twins was in a Bronx court yesterday. The DA's office said that Juan Rodriguez's case has been adjourned till February. And the DA is still trying to figure out, as they continue their investigation, as to why he left the children in the car. And there are many people feel he suffered enough already. But one of the things the state has an obligation to do is to represent the rights of those children. So we shall see where that goes. And the state trial for Mount Vernon's former top attorney, who was accused of defrauding the city's water department, began yesterday. This in News 12. And they're talking, of course, about corporate counsel Lawrence Bakari. He's charged with corrupting the government, grand larceny, defrauding the government, and offering a false instrument for filing. He was indicted this past May. He's accused of stealing, which is pretty strong, more than $350,000 from the city's water department to pay then-Mayor Richard Thomas's legal fees and a public relations firm. At that time, Thomas was under indictment for state election violations. He has since pleaded guilty and resigned. During the opening statements, attorneys for the state attorney general's office laid out the alleged scheme, arguing Bakari wanted to please the mayor but couldn't get the funds through proper channels. But as is well known and documented here and in other news outlets, it would seem the issues of paying bills in that city, who was in charge, who should approve them, et cetera, is an issue so shrouded in mystery and mismanagement that I would be very surprised if he does not get acquitted. And that's my opinion piece at the end of that story. Alrighty, it's 9:03. A man who covers stories as well as anyone, the managing editor of the Yonkers Tribune, the publisher and managing editor. Please welcome Hezi Aris. Good morning, Hezi.
Good morning. Appreciate you calling me because I was trying to reach you and I couldn't get through.
No, we saw that because
really
we were finishing up with another guest, but I'm the master of this technology, but I'm learning it. It's real modern stuff. It's good, but it requires a defter hand than mine. Chris, we'll check him. I'll call you over the weekend because we're going to do something different on Monday. All righty, let us get back.
Well, let me just comment on your dissertation a moment ago and an opinion piece on the Bakari case. We covered it as well.
I know.
And I didn't think there was any question whether there was proof or difficulty in getting funding in Mount Vernon. Evidently, what's her name, Deborah Reynolds, she did an exemplary job. And, hey, show me the proof, and I'll be happy to dispense the money, which she did on other cases.
in that case, yes, I understand that. And as I mentioned earlier when I talked about it at greater length, it may well have been appropriate for her to do that. But we have, and again, I've seen some proof, not all of it, that there were other bills she would not pay, now based on not seeing the proof. But she's been invited on many times. We're going to invite her on again. But the new mayor
That
says
has nothing to do whether she calls you back. That has nothing to do.
no.
with
What I'm
the
letting
job.
you know is I've given her a chance, and will continue to give her a chance to tell us that is it really true that every bill this mayor submitted you wouldn't approve? She's got to answer that.
No, every bill. No, excuse me. She was under assault in that administration on a consistent basis, and she was the only one standing up for what she did. What she did was abide by the rules.
She may well have. I've not seen evidence of that.
Meant well, she did it right. What is it that she didn't pay that you've even seen that she should have paid?
There were
Where's the
bills.
proof of that?
There were requests. There were requests to pay auditors to go in and do the audits of those different departments. The mayor has said, and I'm going to, either he's a bold-faced.
The mayor's been a liar. The mayor was a liar.
In every instance?
Where's the credibility in the mayor?
In every instance, was he a liar?
How many times are you permitted to lie before you're regarded as a liar and you cannot be taken as credible?
Now, what about the fact
how
that...
often does one do that?
Now, what would you say that he was a liar? And again, I don't want to get so wrapped up in this and I don't do your stories.
No, I don't want to get wrapped up.
No, but one of the things that
lying.
that I did see, Hezi, and I still scratch my head, I saw the letters. I have copies of the letters where the mayor appealed to the comptroller of the state of New York to come in and do an audit of the city's books. I have seen that letter. I have seen when the auditor changed his mind. I have seen the court order by the judge for the comptroller to open the books. That's all I'm saying. There's something murky there. Now, I have said many times, to be fair to this comptroller, either she is a hero or there's something more going on. And I accept your description of her as a likely hero, but there still was a lack of openness on the part of her office.
And so was there lack of openness on the mayor as
absolutely,
well.
And he's paid the price.
Openness with respect to what's his name, Procari, and there was a lack of openness on many places. The problem is that this city at that time was a poster child for total corruption on every level.
Yes.
You know why I know the money didn't come from the right sources?
Oh, I know it didn't
too.
One
time, I told you, we had gotten a check for advertising. They sent us the check. It came from the Industrial Development Agency, which it never dawned on me would not be the appropriate place to receive funds from, but that's what was used for. And it was not. We had nothing to do with economic development, unless you want to stretch the concept that, well, if they sent us money to promote the projects that they were doing, an event here and an event there, it may have amounted to that. But one thing you have to remember, if I rob a bank because I'm aware that you need money and I don't benefit from it, and I give you the money knowing that you would need it, or that you do need it because you told me, how else would I even know you needed $365,000 if you didn't tell me?
I'm with you, but here's a question. Here's a question that I've never gotten an answer to. And look, I am willing to accept that it's possible. We'll find out that Richard Thomas really did leave checks on his desk, that he never put the documentation, and I'm sure he's guilty of some of that. But from the day he walked in that office, because I visited his office that first week, and I said, "Well, you don't have any pens?" She wouldn't approve them. You don't have this? I can't get that. And what I accept, and I'm not saying it's legal. Maybe he and the whole bunch belong in jail. But what I do know is their position on it is, and it's never been properly vetted, that the same persons who said to us here, we can't get the money, and yes, we have to use other departments to get the money. That was their justification. It may mean they belong in jail, but that was their justification, and it seemed enduring. But to use it for your legal bills is another matter. So all I'm saying is it's murky. Something's not right, and it isn't just Richard. That's all I'm saying. There's just something.
Okay, well, for you, it's nebulous. For me, it's clear as day.
Oh, well.
I guess so. We'll eventually find out.
Oh, we'll
if
agree
these
to
guys are
now.
crooks.
What I did want to
I
know,
think
since
they are.
so I do wanted to hear from you on that, though. Why would Picaro do this? And why wasn't Richard indicted? Why wasn't Richard Thomas indicted? Because he benefited from the money.
Right. Well, that's the question. So where are the lawyers are going to go after Richard Thomas? So far, no one's gone after him.
Interesting.
And the point is for what reason? And Picari has always been, like a dog on a leash. He always served other masters.
I see.
He was involved as well with Joe Spezio when Picari was corporation counsel in the city of Yonkers.
Uh-huh.
He was one of the least proficient in that department, but whenever there was a need to say something to Joe Spezio, who was a developer in Yonkers at that time, who do you think was the one that went to him? None other than Larry Picari.
Well, if I may say
He was the most ridiculous and debauched character that anyone in their right mind would have employed in the city of Mount Vernon.
Well, let me just say this for our listeners. Hezzy and I agree about 99% of things, and my regard for you is such that my mind is wide open, sir.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. My mind is open to you, too. I just question the integrity of some of these people.
Well, so do I.
Who claim that they're doing everything for the city, and yet they've failed. Why?
Well, what was interesting? I had one of the theories that I had on this is that the Democratic Party made it difficult for Mr. Thomas. But yet Mr. Thomas was telling me now that he's getting along with Reggie Lafayette. So I don't know what to believe. But let's move on, sir. You have a city with plenty of problems that are as interesting as the great city of Mount Vernon. What's going on in Yonkers? What's the latest?
Well, to be honest, I guess I don't know. Did I discuss this thing with you about the Exchange Club in Yonkers?
No, go there.
Well, that was very interesting, actually. The Exchange Club is an event that happens yearly, and they honor different people every year. And this particular year, they ended up wanting to send a farewell to the police commissioner, the former police commissioner, Charles Gardner.
Mm-hmm.
And yet his successor, the present police commissioner, John Mueller, and the PBA detective president, Olson, they both decided not to show, which was amazing. I mean, even from a standard view of protocol, forget whether they like the guy or not, but from a view of protocol, you would expect that they would at least honor the guy. They don't have to say anything. They just have to be there. So many other people showed up, dignitaries. It was emceed by the assembly member, Nader Sayegh, Shelley Mayer, the senator, was there. George Latimer was there, the county executive, and so many other dignitaries. So why would these people, not show up? Even the mayor of Yonkers showed up for about 5 minutes. I just don't get it. But the whole thing is part of this enduring attitude by the present police commissioner, who will tout. Did you read the recent article by Wallet Hub?
Oh yeah, I asked you about it the other day.
Yonkers is the number 2.
Yeah, I did. I couldn't wait to get your reaction to this.
Well, it's ridiculous. We're not number 2. From the moment the present police commissioner became the acting police commissioner, crime went up.
Let me ask you about police commissioners in general, if I may, because you cover so much. And I don't want to paint it with a brush. They've got a hard job. Politically, it's difficult. Both sides are after them. The liberals want them to let people go. The conservatives want them to lock them up forever. All the basic stuff. However, we've got one in jail from Harrison. We've got the complaints you make about this guy, and something that Richard Thomas, Sean Patterson, Howard, and I think even Andre Wallace agree on. They all believe that there's illegality and corruption in their police department. And in fact, Sean Patterson Howard called it criminality, which is a little early for that. But what is it? I'm very naive. I'm naive.
She knows things that it's criminal. So,
Well,
you know.
but what I'm saying is I'm surprised that this happens in police departments, and that's how naive and Pollyannish I am. What is it? Is it the politics?
Well, you
of
were
the job?
talking earlier about the gambling in sports. In fact, actually, I found that segment extremely interesting, even though I know nothing about sports. I have no idea, how you decide who will win and who won't win. But I did learn a couple of things, which was fascinating, about how I guess the illegality that came about was it's not that people necessarily threw a game or decided not to hit the ball, but just that they were weak or they were not feeling well or blah, blah, blah. There are all kinds of reasons. Say that again?
Huge. No, it's huge. In fact, hanging around some of those bookmakers, as I did as a kid, they could tell me who was hurt. When they set a line, they knew who was hurt. They knew who was fighting with their wives. It was all kinds of stuff that they knew because the ball players didn't make a lot of money then.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point. And let's look at the police department in Yonkers. For example, there was an incident a while back where a police officer and his partner arrived at the 3rd precinct in Yonkers. It's located on Riverdale Avenue, not far from the Bronx line. They have a parking lot that's attached to the police precinct itself. And the two officers came in, and the guy who was not the driver went inside to, I guess, do the paperwork to advise what had happened or what transpired during their shift. And they were on an early shift. So the early shift would allow them to come in at about 7 o'clock in the morning. By 8 o'clock, somebody else would pick up their car, the next shift. So they arrived at around 7 o'clock. The one guy goes in, does all the stuff. Eventually he comes out and finds that the guy who was driving the car is slumped in the car, and he can't wake him up. They call up the fire department. The fire department comes up, have to inject him with 3 doses of what's it called? Naloxone?
Narcan, or whatever,
Narcan or whatever, however, I think they were able to resuscitate him only after 3 canisters, which meant he was like practically dead. So, and the next thing you know is he's transported over to the hospital, and that's when HIPAA comes in, and the Police Benevolent Association, they take over, and they make sure that nobody can ask any questions. Okay, not a problem, because no one was interested in inquiring one way or the other. But then, in this, I think it's now 2 to 3 months since it happened, the guy isn't to be found. Nobody knows where he is. Supposedly he's in rehab somewhere, and he's still getting paid, and he's getting paid as a police officer, and he doesn't engage in serving the public as a police officer. He's got a drug problem. Guess what? Yonkers has a police drug problem. Do you know that we have not tested any of our people for drug use? We don't give them a test.
Is the issue the testing?
They won't take a piss test.
No, but isn't it
insanity?
I'm asking this question because I'm trying to understand it. Now, do you think they have the same level of drug abuse as any other organization, but they just don't test for it, or are you asserting that they might have more?
I'm suggesting that they have no more and no less.
Okay.
What I am suggesting is that if an individual who's a police officer has got a problem with drug addiction of any kind, then the bottom line is they are not going to be able to be concerned or take care of their partner who's in the car with them. They're not able to take care of you, who's a regular citizen on the street who may need their help, and they're incapacitated to do the job. And they're also not available to protect property. So of what value is it? And why should we be embarrassed to own up to the fact that, yeah, we got a problem with drug addiction, so do something about it? You know how they take care of it in New York City? You get found doing drugs, you are suspended immediately. Immediately. They don't even question it. And then they figure out what to do to help you become rehabilitated. In New Jersey, we quoted a story in which a cop was also missing. They couldn't get a hold of the guy, but they have a beacon or something, some sort of a notification that if another police car can check and find out your particular, I guess, beacon or the code that it sends out. And they located the guy. He was also slumped in his car, and they needed to give him, to resuscitate him with 2 of these capsules. And they brought him in and said, hey, you're gone. We're going to suspend your license. You're going to be on rehab for 5 years. You're not allowed to go anywhere in a car, any place. And if you do, you'll be thrown into prison, and that's it. And your time is over. That's the way they do it everywhere else except in Yonkers.
My guest is Hezi Aris. He's the publisher and editor of the Yonkers Tribune here in Westchester County. He has been a newspaper man for quite some time here in the county. He also previously was the editor of the Westchester Guardian. I'm sure you've made inquiries to the police force. How do they answer to the fact that they don't have a drug testing program?
They don't even answer that question. There is supposed to be a drug program that is there to rehabilitate people. However, the people that go there may go there, and when they come back, either they'll get their job back. Hey, we had one guy who used to work for the DPW commissioner. This goes back quite a few years. He used to get drunk. He was a deputy commissioner of DPW. He got drunk. He got drunk usually in Dobbs Ferry, and then when he came back to Yonkers, he used to crash into cars. He crashed 3 cars, and they gave him a second car. He crashed that one too, and then the 3rd time they were concerned, even though he went to rehab. He was still a drinker at that time. I don't think he was anything more potent than drinking. And they gave him a driver. So this is the way they take care of their own. Hey, we're so over budget on our police work, for example, in Yonkers, that we give our people in Yonkers, our police officers, an opportunity to pension pad. We've got people that retired on earning in the last year alone $230,000 a year. You got to work 24 hours a day practically to get that overtime, but they feed it only that overtime to their own personnel, their favorite sons and favorite daughters.
It's always been thus. Some cities, in fact, here in New Rochelle, Chuck Strome put an end to that. But why has that not happened in your city?
Well, they used to work out an agreement years ago that 60 hours every 2 weeks and overtime was permitted, but it was never a guarantee. Only last year, when they went to approve the budget in Yonkers, the police commissioner then, Police Commissioner Gardner, said he would prefer that we drop it down to 40 hours maximum, and that it was not a guarantee either. And the police commissioner, the police chief at the time, who manages overtime, because that's their responsibility, was at that time the police chief was the present police commissioner. So even though the police commissioner at the time that he was a police chief said, I want to reduce it to 40, and everybody voted for the budget at that time thinking that things would be reduced, the police chief at that time chose not to. And one of the recipients of that largesse was his brother, Michael Muller, who, of all things, the last 2 weeks that he worked, he earned 59 hours of overtime. Wow. So this is all for pension padding. This is called corruption. And you know what? The city of Yonkers is broke, and they have no right to do what they're doing. And you get paid overtime. The only ones that do are the lackeys that are members of the PBA.
Now, I remember
who are the chosen few.
Several years ago when you were running The Guardian, you had done some stories about they used to use overtime to plug the budget. In other words, they would just put in overtime rather than, or rather let overtime run out and then go over budget rather than actually increase their budgets. Do they do that
That's
same
right.
thing now?
Yeah, but to a lesser extent, but they do that anyway.
Let's
And
go.
look, the bottom line is if you employ people, if you give them overtime, what you're really doing is you're undermining the capacity and the financial health of a city that it would be better for them to hire people that at the regular rate rather than to pay them time and a half. Because for every individual, like for example, if you have two people who are earning time and a half, that means like you could be employing three people for the rate that they're getting, right? So you got three cops instead of two cops, but they'll be on the job and they won't be earning $200,000 at the end of the year, so they could retire at half of that.
And then in perpetuity, I might add.
In perpetuity till they die.
Yeah.
And you know what? Today people live till their 80s and 90s.
Yep, and let's hope we do too. I wanted to move on to another issue as well.
Well, we hope for you. I don't know if I'll last that long.
Yeah, yes, you will. You're too cranky not to last that long.
Oh, yeah,
9:26.
that's true. That's what everyone would say.
Now,
Yeah, exactly.
We saw big stories came out about a month ago. Now, make sure you've taken your blood pressure meds before I go there.
Okay.
Your city is planning on spending millions of dollars on school infrastructure. I'm sure the money's needed,
Yes.
but where are they going to get that money from?
Well, they don't have the money. It's just the biggest con job you've ever heard in your life. Look, let's look at this. In a normal situation, should the state decide to underwrite our building, and they need to approve our building of a school, should they want to do that, they would give us basically, they would pay for 70% of the value of the school, and the other 30%. That's the way they break it up for us. There'll be other places that may get an 80-20 split or may get a 90-10 split, but we are on the level of, let's say, 70% that the state pays, and we have to pay 30. So 30% of $100 million is $30 million, right? $30 million is, if you divide by 3 million, and the reason I'm using that the value of 3 million is because for every $3 million in debt the city of Yonkers is engaged in, or gets engaged in, our taxes must increase by a value of 1% to pay off that $3 million. So if you've got a $30 million debt and divided by 3, that amounts to a 10% increase in our tax. How are we going to manage that when we've already busted our budget from last year on police alone? Crime is going up, even if Wallet Hub, I don't even know what the hell they are, maybe just another PR firm that just loves to suck up to one community after another with falsehoods. And you know what's interesting too with the crime rate? When was the last time we issued a crime rate? Did we tell anybody what the crime rates and statistics were 2 years ago? We didn't. Why are we lauding it now? And this police commissioner just got into office about 2 months ago, and yet they're celebrating that since 2017 crime has gone down. Then why didn't they celebrate the police commissioner at that time, Mr. Gardner? Because there was nothing to celebrate even then.
Well, we have something to celebrate.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we have something to celebrate now. I have to do a weather report and an update, and a station update. When we come back, I'd like you to share with us when the next time we go on your website, or particularly after the weekend and all your research, what top stories will you be working on? But first, Hezi Harris, we do have to share with the community what's going on in the weather world. And so we will. Right now, it's up to 34. We finally gained a few degrees. The high today is going to be 43. Only a 10% chance of rain. It's mostly cloudy, though, as you can see right now. A scattered rain or snow shower. I'm not buying it at 44 degrees, but that's what they said. Tonight, a few passing clouds, breezy with cold, with lows around 30. It will feel like the upper teens north of the city, a low to mid-20s south. Tomorrow, mostly sunny and cold with highs around 35. Sunny on Sunday, and mostly sunny skies. The high will be 42. The overnight low will be 37 degrees. And this weather was brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. The bottom half of the hour is brought to you by Plug-in Virtual Reality, Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues radio programs, the law firm of Pena and Kahn and Dominic Cigars. Don't forget, Monday at 8 o'clock, we will share with you Jake's Picks of the Week, brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They are open 7 days, and as you know, each and every Monday George Latimer joins us, and we will be hearing from him on Monday. We have a number of questions and issues to discuss with him. Right now, we return to our conversation with the managing editor and the publisher of the Yonkers Tribune. Welcome back for the bottom of the hour, Hezi Aris. Good morning, my friend.
Well, good morning. What a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me to your program.
The pleasure's ours. What stories are you working on? If I go on your website tomorrow morning, what's like me to have me stomping my feet?
Well, I usually don't work on Saturday. It's like very, very rare.
But that's good.
Usually you find the stories on Sunday.
So tell me.
If that's possible. So, well, the big story that I'm working on really is to decipher why the Yonkers Police Department, particularly the PBA and the Captain, Lieutenant, and Sergeants Association, why they employ the Nick Spano, who's a lobbyist, since he...
No, don't tell me they employ... Don't tell me that. I know you just did, but allow me to be aghast. That's nepotism. He promised when he ran the first time, 8 years ago, he said, I will not bring my family into the administration. Said it on TV. I got the tape.
I know, but it didn't matter. Well, I'm talking about the mayor's brother.
Oh, I know.
Oldest brother, Nick Spano. And Nick Spano, as a lobbyist, is getting 24. No, wait a minute. I'm losing my mind here. Give me a second.
That wasn't far to go.
Yeah, $24,000 a year from the Police Benevolent Association. At one time, it was $48,000, but now it's down to $24,000. And the Captain, Lieutenant, and Sergeant Association, they give him $12,000 a year. And the thing that's really incongruous for one to wrap your head around is, well, why is he getting that sort of funding when he can do absolutely nothing of value for either of these police departments in Yonkers, because he's not allowed to engage in anything with the mayor, because the mayor is his brother. So then why are they paying him? It's exactly as you suggested. There can't be any other rationale other than nepotism. So this is the big issue. But what we've done is we've been able to find the paperwork and the paper trail that will reveal exactly what they've been doing and how they're funneling the money, which is a deceptive concept that only they could come up with. But it also takes only the Yonkers Tribune to deceptively uncover it. And so this is what we're going to do. We're going to expose this whole operation because it's costing the city money and the PBA money. And you know what's also interesting? The PBA has never, ever issued a financial as to how it's spending its money. They're spending the police officers' money, but they never give him an accounting. And the best part of all is they've just increased the cost to the police officers from it was 100 and let me see, I think it was $130 every month.
Yeah.
Yeah, 165 and 65 is 130 every month, and then they upped it now another $40 more every month. So it's going to go up to I think about $165 a month that per officer that will go to the PBA. and there are about 400 officers. And so that's about 800 and some odd $1,000, and nobody has an accounting of what they're spending the money on. But it goes to spend money to join the Spanos when they're in Florida, to buy them dinners, and so on and so forth. What are they trying to do there? Do you need a lobbyist to go over to Florida and buy them dinners?
Probably.
I don't know. It's a very interesting concept.
Well, it's a very interesting concept, and that's something that we're liable to read, folks, on Sunday morning if we go to Hezzy's outlet, the Yonkers Tribune. What other stories are you working on?
Let's see. Well, oh yeah, that's the other thing too. The big story a couple of days ago, of course, was Uri Clinton, the guy who is the chief operating officer of MGM International that owns the Empire City Casino. And after a year of being on the job and being touted as so pertinent, he was forced to resign. And the mitigating response from MGM in an email is, well, he's supportive of our effort and he's still going to be a consultant. Okay, whatever. However, what's really interesting is that we have yet to receive an answer. Called up the mayor's office, no answer. Called up other people in political office, they don't have a clue. Nobody seems to know anything, which is really insanity. And then the fact that here, a situation, and I'm not, there's no animosity in my heart. I think when the current, I think it was in Hartford, was it? Or Stanford that wrote the paper?
The
article.
Hartford. It's a Hartford.
They got
current.
it. Okay, Hartford Current. Well, they got the notice, but nobody got the notice here, and yet it was relevant to the Westchester County. So how come we didn't get notice? Which is well, they got the scoop, but they were in touch somehow with Las Vegas, so maybe that's the reason they got the info. But we've never got an answer, and the information is extremely nebulous and sketchy. Nobody has an answer for any of it.
I'm wondering, I'm just thinking out loud and going back to my old Wall Street days and some of the stuff they used to do. Is it possible that MGM bought this with the hope of flipping it?
Well, that's what I think I suggested to you last week.
Yes.
I think somebody else is going to buy it.
Yeah.
And the big question is, does someone else have a bigger and deeper pockets than MGM? And MGM will be happy to flip it. It's no big deal.
Do you know,
it's just about money.
Hezzy, this place, if they have real gambling here and this where people don't have to drive 88 hours down to the oasis within a slum of Atlantic City or go all the way up to Mohegan Sun, the thing is going to make a fortune.
Right. Well, that's why everybody wants it. That's why the people are going to be giving up more money. So at the end, MGM purchased Empire City for a pittance at $850 million. I'm sure it could sell for twice that, maybe three times that, because whoever has that financial capacity will get the loans that are necessary and probably has the capacity to run it. And it is a moneymaker. And the market is not Las Vegas. It may be a Las Vegas Strip, and maybe that more money will be made there. However, the big money is going to be here in the New York metropolitan area.
Oh, God, yeah. They're going to have to expand that parking lot.
Once you go beyond that and you get a full casino gambling house like they have in Atlantic City.
That's what I'm talking about.
Or so what ends up happening, they'll probably also allow you to gamble on through the internet.
Oh, absolutely.
Huge.
And there's probably going to be the opportunity, if the land is available, for hotels and everything else.
Well, no, the land is available. That's the beauty of Empire City. They could build a convention center. There is no convention center, but that's because the idiots in Yonkers never wanted to build one, even though they had the capacity to do so. But they were holding on to the property because one of their friends owned it and didn't pay their real estate taxes for maybe 30
when you say
years.
property, you're talking about their oversized parking lot and A and B. Do you think they keep the track? The track's a nice
I'm not
feature.
talking about them. They paid their taxes,
Okay.
but they would use some of the parking lot, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and who knows what else they could do.
That-
I don't know.
That would be some revenue
But
generator
they
for
have it,
your
and
city.
there's room across the street too from the Empire City Casino. We have a place called Stewart Stamping.
Mm-hmm.
Don't exactly remember what they did, but it was probably some metallurgical output or production of something. But it's huge. It's been barren for years now, and it's just ready to be developed.
Who knew?
I mean, there are places to develop in Yonkers, and certainly around Yonkers Raceway, it would be phenomenal.
That's going to be extraordinary. Any other stories you're
Yeah,
working
but
on?
it's not just a Yonkers deal. That's the thing
No,
that
it's going to
people
be
have
good
remember.
for the whole region, and it's going to be good for the county if they do it. But it also comes, I
Well,
guess.
it's going to be for the county. It's going to be very pertinent, and everyone wants a piece of the action, and they should be able to get a piece of the action because it is just what it is. And you know what? At present, even Yonkers Raceway, Empire City, has been the number one funder of money that goes to the state.
Wow.
Of all the casinos.
That's amazing. Who knew? And I guess it makes sense. The basic premises that we're basing this conversation on. Hezi, I wanted to talk a little bit more general about your newspaper, but before I do, any other stories that you think you want to tickle before I ask you about your paper in general?
Well, we could do that in a second. I just want you to know, we have a very large Jordanian Arab community that live and reside in Yonkers.
Yes.
So it dawned on me, what am I missing here? Because I think everybody wants to know a little bit something about the old country, wherever the old country is.
Sure.
So whether it was Puerto Rico or whether it was DR or whether it was places in South America, which I cover on radio incessantly. And so I said, we've not done anything about Jordan. So it's a little bit difficult, I guess. Maybe it didn't dawn on me because here I am, an Israeli, and I'm saying, how come we don't talk about Jordan? So there was a terrific story about Jordan yesterday that we wrote.
Okay, could you hold it just right there? You are hitting
Sure.
on, and I hate giving you any compliments, but one of the things about your
don't
paper.
do that.
No, but one of the things about your paper, and you're answering it before I asked it, which is kind of cool, but I'm going to preface it because it's hard to brag about yourself. Your paper is a meal. Your website, when it came out in hard form, paper form, when it does, but the website itself, there are stories. It's not just ads and flip a couple of pages and there's nothing there. There are stories about more than just the crime that you cover and the editorials that you do and the schools and everything else, such as what you're talking about. And that's what I wanted to do with this last segment. Let's talk about the kinds of stories that are in your paper and what you tried, who you're servicing, who your audience is, and so forth, and go back to this story about Jordan. What a great idea. That's the kind of thing the Wall Street Journal is always famous for, getting into these other kinds of stories, even as they covered business and news. Continue.
Well, their business is what drives the equation. So when they write about business, it also percolates down to other issues.
Yep.
One of the things that this came about was that I learned that Jordan is planning to raise the wages of their public sector. And they're going to do that in the year 2020.
How?
And they have a prime minister that took over from the last one last year. It was only in June of 2018. So I guess what is that? It's about a year and a half ago that he took over. And at that time, there was his predecessor resigned as a result of widespread protests against an International Monetary Fund imposition of austerity measures. Well, everywhere around Jordan, except probably for the state of Israel, Lebanon is under siege. The government, there are so many demonstrations against the government there. Syria, everybody's heard about. In Iraq, they're actually they actually burned. Can you imagine? In part of Iraq, they burned the Iranian embassy in Najaf, which is a holy city. And in Iran, they're demonstrating. Saudi Arabia has its own issues. Egypt has got its own problems as well. So Jordan says there's strife all around them. And they wanted to avoid any strife and demonstrations So the government chose to pay what is it? Well, 1 second. Oh, they tried this. They decided to pay 700,000 state employees and personnel, like civilians, as well as military retirees, pensions, increased pensions. So those costs are going to go up. They're going to go up about I think 19%.
But you know what?
Time,
you know what's interesting?
Terrific.
You know what's interesting?
And that's
Hezzy?
to avoid all these issues.
What's interesting is that Jordan, you're right. Jordan's been off everybody's radar. It used to be in the radar quite a lot back in the day.
Right.
Now, aren't they a constitutional monarchy? Don't they still have a king?
They are.
And
they
have
are.
they have a prime minister now.
Hashemite Kingdom.
Yes, the
Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. And King Abdullah II is its ruler.
Yeah, because I remember the one king was very popular. He had his American wife and all of that stuff. Now a lot of
this guy. That's this guy.
Yeah.
Oh no, the American wife. I guess
that was his father.
Hussein.
Yeah, Hussein. That's it.
it.
Thank you for reminding my tiny brain. One of the interesting things about Jordan, it's one of the countries that was carved out after World War I, and there were always issues. Is it true that they have Palestinians there that are not considered, though, part of the population? Do you know?
I don't think so. I don't think that they regard them as like outcasts or not pertinent to Jordan. They always had. Well, the present king, for example, his wife is of Palestinian.
Mm-hmm.
She regards herself as Palestinian ethnic, and so there are so there's a marriage there that works, but I don't think anyone that's of Palestinian heritage is going to be regarded as an outcast in Jordan.
No, I know, but I'm trying to go back to politically. There was this sense among some proponents that Israel didn't need a two-state solution because Jordan was supposed to be the home of the Palestinians, and it didn't happen.
Well, well, no, I think that's not an appropriate definition of what's going on. I don't think it happened that way. Bear with me a second. I'm getting this ringing sound. Okay, sorry.
Oh, I understand.
Are you still there?
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I've had technical issues all day.
What ended up happening in Jordan was at the time of 1948, when Israel fought for its independence, there were a large number of Arabs that lived in the West Bank.
Yes.
However, when the fight against Israel took place, Lebanon and Syria and Jordan and Egypt and everybody else wanted to fight just to destroy the
state of Israel.
However,
sure.
they won.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, the religious leader said, "Hey, let's all leave. We'll be able to come back and drive the Jews into the sea in a week." And so a lot of people left. So the West Bank was barren. However, in the fight, that was when Jerusalem was lost.
Yes.
Or half of it was
half
lost.
of it was lost.
So and then the people who left also came back, and then that became the West. That was the West Bank, but that was the dividing line.
And also the heart of the issue of the classic issue of right of return as well, which it's also interesting. Yeah. But back, I know I got off because I haven't done my
that's okay.
I haven't done my homework on Jordan recently. So more about the piece that you wrote and about their paying the civil servants.
Well, the pieces is just that they're mindful of the fact that the imposition of the International Monetary Fund was too coercive, too onerous on the population, and the kingdom was not looking to have strife and demonstrations and all kinds of things that go with that that could take on for months. I mean, look, they had demonstrations for 6 months in France.
In France,
of the Yellow Vest.
Mm-hmm.
They had revolutions in Bolivia and in Chile and Argentina and Colombia. Wherever you look, the world is angry.
The world is angry
and
frustrated, and a lot of it has to do with the disparities in income that continue to grow across across the planet. At 9:49, Hezi, you
it.
mentioned earlier, you talked a little bit, you've been writing about some of the South American countries. Tell us what you're writing about. What intrigues you the most?
Well, they're all very interesting. For example, in Bolivia, the first indigenous ruler of the nation was in office for, I think it was 12 years, and no, I think it was 16 years, and yet, and then he thought that he'd be able to run for another 4-year or 5-year term, and it turns out that he lost. And then they did a recount, and the Organization of the American States did a recount, and they said, no, this wasn't quite right, and let's redo it. So at the end, he ended up leaving because they were rioting in the streets, and the economy was being shot to hell because of that. And he ended up going over to Mexico for, a place to, I don't know, lick his wounds.
Almost an exile.
In Chile,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. In exile, that's the right term. And then in Chile, you had a problem there too. The economy almost got thrown out of whack because, again, the disparity of money, and the country had to infuse the amount of money that they spent in the country.
Fascinating.
They're going to spend over $20 billion to resuscitate the economy, and yet they're now spending an immediate $5.5 billion to start the whole process. But people don't have food; they can't afford food. All these things are happening, and yet that's also what happened in Venezuela. And then the guy that I forgot his name now, the dictator, but then the guy that was approved by 50 other countries, this guy Guaido, turns out that there's corruption in his entourage or his political leanings.
What is the culture in South America that leads to that democracy doesn't work very well? Why is that? Is it the way that
you got strong men? Yeah. You got strong men, and it's happening not just in South America.
Not,
we
right?
may just
Turkey.
We may just think it is because here we are in North America. They're our southern neighbors.
Right.
They have all this tumultuousness that's taken for years. But then we were very much involved in a lot of that.
I was going to ask you about that, but I'm short on time, and I have a better question for you. Have you written it all, and have you been following the issue? Most people are not aware, and I certainly was until I did a little research, that the Amazon is our oxygen tank, and there are concerns for the planet, and there are concerns that the continued logging and other depletions of the forest there are going to change the climate even more than global warming is. Have you?
Well, absolutely. It is our oxygen. I think it produces 20% of the oxygen in the world. And then you have another balance to that, which also produces the same amount of oxygen, and that's in the African basin.
Yes.
And so these are very important. However, Jair Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil, says, hey, you guys had your chance. You destroyed your ecology, and you weren't worried about oxygen whenever you decided to knock down your trees and whatever. And it's now our turn to revive and resuscitate and build our economy, because you're already there and you don't care about the plight of our people. So that's his perspective. And he's right to some extent.
Well,
so there's
he's right in
a
principle.
Different way to balance it.
But can he present a bill then to the other countries of the world if they don't want him to build in his own country? There's got to be a way to help
The truth is that Europe is paying. They are paying. I think they gave him $20 billion last year alone. The point is, what's happening though, and you say, do we report about it? I spoke to an individual yesterday from a company called Earthy. I'll find it in a second. But this group, they were demonstrating in Brooklyn about a week and a half ago. And the reason they were demonstrating is they were in front of Stop and Shop. And Stop and Shop engages a company called Cargill, who is an agriculture behemoth.
Yes.
And what Cargill is doing is they are promoting more beef to come out of Brazil. So in order to be able to have grazing land, you burn the forests. And so that wipes out a good part of it. Look, in the last year alone, maybe Luxembourg is a little country, but they cleared up literally land of that size, and they're going to continue to do so. So
go ahead.
we don't do anything to rectify that because we don't want to. It's not America's a choice only, but the world is not on board.
Well, they need to get on board. Hezi, I want to thank you for making my case for me. One of the things I wanted to get across, and this is with all deference to the other papers out there that do what they have to do to make a living, but if you think that the Yonkers Tribune is just another one of these things, I mean, of course he has to eat. There are ads in there, but it's not the kind of paper where all you do is thumb through it or scroll through it and you get who's appearing at this nightclub or who's got married at this church. There's content in your paper and in your outlet. And it just doesn't stick to Yonkers, or that's your home, Heath, and where you cover the news, but you cover all these other stories and interesting things, and that's.
Well, we do. Like today, for example, on the radio show, we're going to be talking to the mayor of Ossining. I was crestfallen when she wrote, and we published it, of course, that she is leaving.
Yeah.
She will not be seeking another term. My God, you know, this woman is phenomenal.
Yeah, she's really good.
She's one of the best I've ever met. I count her in the same realm as there are three women that have really impressed me. Not because they were women, because they do such a phenomenal job. And that was first Mary Marvin, the mayor of the village of Brownsville. But that's only under 7,000 people.
For her $1, and she only gets $1 a year. She doesn't take a salary. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, I thought she was making about 30,000, but it doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter. She just does an exceptional thing. And what's interesting about her is she knows how to run a village.
Absolutely.
Based on what is appropriate for the village rather than on dogma. She's a Republican.
She's the
which
real
is
deal.
Fine with me. And then you got the real deal from the Democratic perspective, who is none other than Victoria Garrity.
Yes.
She has sewn that village of about 40,000 people together in the same way, and she runs the place by engaging people. So the point is she can engage people. The only question is, can you ratchet it up? And will, for example, Sean Patterson Howard, who is the mayor-elect in Mount Vernon, I think she has that capacity. She could do that with a city of 80,000 people, and she can bring a city together.
Be great
and
to
maybe
see.
There's something attractive about a woman that is not as abrasive as that of a man, and they know how to civilize not only our personal homes and our home life, because the civilizer in any home is the woman and the wife and the mother, and the same thing may happen with under the aegis of a woman mayor.
Well, I think
because the men have been failing.
Yeah, well, one of the things that impressed me about Sean Patterson Howard is that her real reason for being is executive work, and we're hoping that she can shine that light on what she's doing. And the one thing I always thought recommended a woman, and I think of my daughter all the time, that my daughter's a successful microbiologist in a management position, but yet she's bringing up two kids, she's keeping a house, she's the ability to manage multiple. Not that men don't do that. I mean, men have been leading the planet for ages, but it's time, and it can't all be women or all men. But women are getting their honest, good, righteous, and well-earned kick at the can. Now we just got to get religion to follow suit, and let's have women priests.
Well, that's
and
interesting
everything
too,
else.
because the deplorables are the ones that, which I think is a disgusting term, but the so-called the people who live between the West Coast and the East Coast, they have engaged in a religiosity which is endearing to me because they're involved in doing the right things. They worry about unwed mothers the slave trade, and they're worried about so many different things, and they reach out to Africa, and yet people say, "Oh, they're all bigots." No, they're
Well, that's not true. Yeah,
Under the Cross, for example, they do phenomenal work.
Well, listen,
and, I have to own up to that with
it's
with
8:59. It's 8:59, and I have to send you on your way. But I appreciate you
thank you.
participating in our long-form interview. Now, where can people listen to your 10 o'clock show?
Oh, well, I guess it's on Blog Talk Radio. If you go to the YonkersTribune.com website, you'll find our shows always written out on the upper right-hand side of the page.
And how cool is
that's
that?
where
You'll be able to
Victoria
read.
Garrity
You'll be able to
and,
read the
Sean
paper
Patterson
and listen.
Howard.
You'll be able to read the paper and listen. Hezi Harris, thank you
Yeah.
so very much. We'll talk to you again next week, unless a story breaks, and we talk to you Monday.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, be well.
All right,
Bye.
take care. Let's see where we head now. It is at 10 o'clock. And so let's give you another and last look at the weather. It's 34 degrees, cloudy skies, only a 10% chance of rain, but that 10% they tell us we may well see. That is the forecast. Mostly cloudy with a scattered rain or snow shower, highs around 44. I don't think you're going to see that. You're not going to see the snow. And tonight, a few passing clouds, breezy and cold with lows around 30 degrees. It will feel like the upper teens north of 287 and the low to mid 20s down here across the Sound Shore. On Saturday, mostly sunny but cold, highs only around 35 degrees. We'll take it. We like the sun, as we will on Sunday. Mostly sunny skies. The high will be 42. The overnight low will be 37 degrees. Want to thank all of our guests today. Of course, Hezi Harris, just taking his leave now. Dr. Sternberg, Jake's picks, and remember, 8 o'clock on Monday, we'll tell you how well he did. He's still winning, but it's kind of leveling off. Is he going to be a 500 pitcher? We shall see. Janelle Albritton, Steve Callis, Maren Vandermeer, he, of course, our correspondent in Europe. Very honest assessment of how the people behave disrespectfully to President Trump, acting, as he said, like schoolgirls. Coming up on Monday, George Latimer will be with us, Tom Abenante, Bob Cox, and more. We still have a few other people to line up. Thank you so much for listening. Today's programs are supported by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhdc.com. They also exclusively brought you the weather, excuse me. That's a bad habit from 20 years of doing this. Well, 15. And Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, and Plug-in Virtual Reality, and, of course, Dominic Cigars. Thanks for listening, everyone. We will be in touch, and we will be here at 6 o'clock. Actually, about 6:08 on Monday morning. Thanks for listening.